Today, we're venturing deep into the heart of Texas, where the land is as vast as its legends, and just as terrifying. From eerie lights haunting dark rivers to ancient forces that never should have been disturbed, get ready for 20 of the most disturbing true highway horror stories from Texas that will make you question what's real and what's lurking just beyond the horizon. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing. And by doing so, they miss out on the creepiest, spine-tingling tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now. Because tonight's just the beginning, and the terror waiting in the darkness is far from over. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because here, the night is only getting started, and the horror is waiting to unfold. Now let's dive into the darkness. I don't drive that stretch of Highway 351 anymore. Folks around Abilene know it, though they don't call it by name. They just say, "Don't take that mile at night." I thought it was old rancher talk, small town superstition, like all the other things that get whispered over beers in a Whataburger booth after midnight. But I learned the hard way that there's something wrong out there east of Abilene, between the cotton fields and the mesquite, past a dead rest stop that hasn't seen a soul since the 90s. I only tell this because I need to put it down somewhere. I don't expect anyone to believe me. It was fall of '98, a Tuesday night, dry and crisp the way only West Texas can be when the summer finally breaks. I'd stayed late at a friend's place, helping him wrench on his old Chevy that had blown a radiator. By the time I got back on the road, it was close to midnight. The air smelled like dust and cut hay. The sky was cloudless, sharp with stars. The drive from there to my duplex was maybe 25 minutes if I stuck to 351. That stretches, flat as a skillet. Cotton fields stretching off forever on both sides. Radio towers blinking red in the dark. I'd driven it hundreds of times, but that night, it wasn't the same. The first thing that went wrong was the radio. I had KBCY on, some George Strait playing low. Out there, the signal's usually clear, but halfway down that stretch it cut out. Just went to static like I'd driven under a bridge, only there wasn't a bridge for miles. I fiddled with the knob, tried AM, tried FM, nothing but hissing. Fine, I thought. I'll let the silence ride. But then my phone cut out too. It was one of those Nokia bricks, the old kind with a green screen and snake on it. Battery was full, bars were up, then gone. Just a blank screen. Dead as if I'd pulled the battery. I told myself not to spook. Old lines, old towers, maybe a dead zone. I'd be out of it in a couple minutes. But I wasn't. About a half mile. Later, I started hearing it. At first, I thought it was my tires picking up loose gravel. This faint crunch right outside the driver's side. Only it kept perfect pace with me. 55 miles an hour, and it didn't lag, didn't fade, just steady. I rolled down my window to listen, and that's when my stomach turned cold. It wasn't gravel. It was footsteps, heavy ones, like boots, hitting the dirt shoulder, clear as day. Someone was walking right beside my car. I hit the gas, eased it up to 65. My old Ford wasn't the fastest, but she could move. The sound never slipped. Just step, 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 keeping time with me. I remember glancing out my window, heart in my throat, half expecting to see somebody jogging along the shoulder. There was nothing. Just mesquite, a barbed wire fence, and endless cotton glowing pale under the starlight. But I swear to you, I could feel it. That presence pacing me. By then I had that pins and needles feeling in my neck, like somebody was leaning over my shoulder. The cab smelled strange too, damp like wet dirt after rain, even though it hadn't rained in weeks. I gripped the wheel tight and muttered out loud, "Don't look, just drive." But when you tell yourself not to look, you always do. So I flicked my eyes to the side mirror. And that's when I saw it. Not a person. Not really. More like a shadow stretched too tall, too thin, keeping pace with my truck. No detail, just outline. Arms, that swung too long, legs moving in slow, deliberate strides even though I was doing 70 by then. My throat closed up. My palms went slick. I wanted to floor it, but the road's narrow there, no lights, no shoulder worth a damn. Wrecking in the middle of nowhere felt worse than whatever was out there. I kept my speed steady, tried to breathe, tried to pray. But the shadow didn't go away. I passed a green mile marker, only it was wrong. It read 3:51:13. Thing is, I'd already passed mile 13 10 minutes earlier. Out there, the markers don't lie. You drive east, they count down neat as clockwork. Looked back in the mirror. Still there. Longer now, like it was stretching itself taller just to make sure I knew it wasn't going anywhere. That's when I broke. I gritted my teeth and said, "Screw it," and stomped the accelerator. The truck roared up past 80, rattling so hard I thought the glove box might drop open. The sound of footsteps didn't just keep up, it got louder, like whatever it was had leaned closer to the door. My whole window felt wrong, like a hand might smack the glass any second. Then, just as sudden as it had started, it stopped. No footsteps, no shadow in the mirror, just empty highway and the hum of my tires. I slowed down when I hit the next intersection, pulled off at a gas station that was dark except for one buzzing light over the pumps. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely fish out my wallet. When I finally looked at my phone, the screen was back on. 12:01 a.m., battery full, signal strong. Radio worked too, George Strait crooning like nothing had happened. But when I got home, there was mud on the driver's side door, thick streaks of it running from the window down to the handle. Only it hadn't rained in weeks, and the shoulder out there isn't mud. It's dust and gravel. I scrubbed it off the next morning before work. Didn't tell anybody for years. But I've heard other folks mention that stretch, usually in a quiet voice. They'll say their radios die, their phones blank, and sometimes they hear something keeping pace with them in the dark. They call it the silent mile. I'll tell you this much. If you're ever driving east of Abilene late at night and your radio cuts to static, don't roll your window down. The first thing I remember about that night is how wrong the air felt. Not just hot, not just heavy with that usual hill country humidity, but thick, like breathing through a wet rag. I'd driven Highway 281 more times than I could count back and forth between San Antonio and Marble Falls, and nothing about that stretch of road had ever unsettled me. But that night, somewhere past Johnson City, the pavement ahead looked like it was sweating under the headlights. It was July, deep summer, when the cicadas don't shut up even at night, and the asphalt holds the day's heat like a grudge. My old Ford F-150 didn't have the best AC, so I had the driver's window cracked, arm resting out, fingers brushing the slipstream. I could smell cedar, dust, and the faint tang of dead skunk. Normal Texas things, nothing out of place. Except the road. Around mile marker 458, the blacktop looked pale, like the high beams were catching a frost, which made no damn sense at 93 degrees, not at near midnight. I leaned forward, squinting, half expecting it was just a mirage or the reflection off, some spilled diesel. But when the tires hit it, I felt the back end slide just slightly like I'd hit ice. I gripped the wheel hard, cussed, and corrected. The truck steadied, but my stomach didn't. I slowed down after that, sticking to about 50. The shoulder out there is narrow, lined with barbed wire fence and mesquite trees that claw the edges of the sky. I didn't want to stop, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just driven over something I wasn't supposed to. About a mile later, I saw it. Not a deer, not a hog, not anything with weight and meat. It was just a shadow across the road, long and low, dragging itself from one side of the asphalt to the other. The headlights didn't catch detail. No fur, no hide, no skin. Just a moving patch of absence, like something cut a hole out of the night and let it crawl loose. My first thought was, tree branch. Except the wind wasn't blowing. Then, coyote. Except it had no shape I could name. And when it reached the barbed wire, it slipped straight through without bending a single strand. I pressed the gas, heart thumping, watching in the rear view. Nothing behind me but headlights bouncing off the road, cicadas still screaming in the trees. I told myself I was tired. I'd been working 10-hour days on a construction crew in Marble Falls. Patching roofs under the sun and the heat can cook your brain. Maybe I'd nodded off a second. Maybe I'd dreamed it. That's what I repeated to myself, mile after mile, until I saw the second patch of road. This one stretched longer, almost the full width of the 2-lane highway, and as soon as the tires touched it, the truck fishtailed again. Not wild, but enough to jack my pulse up. The steering felt wrong, too, like something was pulling against the wheel, tugging me sideways into the dark. I swore out loud, yanking the truck back into line. I wasn't drunk, wasn't high, hadn't touched a thing stronger than a Whataburger coffee since noon. But my palms were slick with sweat, and the inside of the cab felt colder somehow. Then, the air outside. That's when I saw the mile marker again. I knew damn well I'd passed it 10 minutes ago. I slowed almost to a crawl, headlights crawling over the weeds at the shoulder. Maybe I'd misread. Maybe I was looping myself. But the green reflective sign didn't lie. 458. Same dents in the post, same stickers peeling off. I pulled over. I didn't want to, but I did. Killed the engine, left the headlights burning into the blacktop. The cicadas had gone quiet all at once, like someone flipped a switch. That silence felt worse than any noise. I stepped out. Boots, crunching gravel. The air should have been sweltering, but it hit me cool, damp. Almost like early morning fog off the Blanco River, except the river was miles east. The asphalt in front of my truck was pale again. That same frost sheen. I crouched, reached out with one hand, half thinking I'd feel oil or maybe dust. Instead, my palm came away wet. Not slick, not oily. Wet, like I'd pressed it to a cold window. And when I pulled back, there was a print, my handprint darker than the pavement, steaming in the night air. I got back in the truck fast, slammed the door, locked it out of habit. The steering wheel felt clammy, like someone else had just let go of it. I drove. Too fast, tires spitting gravel when I hit the shoulder. The cab smelled faintly of mildew now, river wet and rotten leaves. Every mile marker I passed looked wrong. Either the numbers repeated or skipped ahead by tens, 462, 463, then suddenly back to 458 again. I don't remember exactly how long it took before I saw the glow of Marble Falls on the horizon. But when I finally hit the city limit sign, the clock on the dash still read 11:47 p.m. Same as when I'd left Johnson City, nearly 40 minutes earlier. I parked at my buddy's duplex, shaking so bad I could barely lock the truck. He opened the door before I knocked, said I looked pale as a ghost. I tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled. He just shoved a beer in my hand and told me to sit down. The next morning I went back. Broad daylight, July sun baking everything to 105 degrees. I drove the whole stretch, both directions, slow, windows down. Nothing. No frost patches, no shadows crawling the road. Just dead armadillos and fresh asphalt patches. But near mile marker 458, I pulled over again, walked the shoulder, scanned the pavement. That's when I saw it. My handprint. Pressed into the asphalt like it had sunk half an inch, edges hardened, dark as tar. The Department of Transportation repaved that section in 2005, and it's long gone now. But I don't drive 281 at night anymore, not after 11:47 p.m., not anywhere near mile marker 458. I've driven that stretch of I-35 more times than I can count. Anyone who's run between Dallas and Austin knows it by heart. The same chain gas stations, the Buc-ee's billboards popping up miles before you hit one, the endless beat of semis rolling alongside. I used to joke that the drive felt like sleepwalking with my hands on the wheel. But that night I swear I found an exit that isn't there. It was late, somewhere south of Waco. The night air was sticky, low 70s, and I had my window cracked because the AC in my old F-150 had given up sometime that summer. The radio barely picked up stations, just fuzzy Tejano bleeding into country. My eyes were starting to blur from the headlights and endless road. That was when I saw it. A green exit sign. No number, just the words. Rest area, 1 mile. I remember, thinking how strange that was. I knew the map. I knew the rhythm of exits there. West, Elm Mott, Bruceville Eddy. That patch south of Waco didn't have a rest stop until well past Temple. But the sign looked fresh, reflective paint glowing in my high beams. I figured maybe I'd just never noticed it before, so I took it. The ramp curved longer than it should have, dipping into a shallow cut of trees. The sound changed. You don't really think about that until you notice it. How highways always have that hiss of rubber and steel. But as I came off the exit, it was like somebody hit mute. Just crickets, louder than they had any right to be. The rest stop appeared like a postcard from the 80s. One long concrete building with vending machines glowing behind glass. A line of covered picnic tables. Payphones bolted to the wall, though I hadn't seen those in years. Sodium lights buzzing overhead, throwing everything in that orange, sickly glow, and not a single car. That struck me harder than anything. 11:40 something on a Saturday night? Rest areas are never empty. There's always at least one 18-wheeler idling, some family stretching their legs. But the lot was spotless. No tire marks, no trash, no dark oil spots where cars usually sit. Like it hadn't been used in years, yet it looked brand new. I pulled into a spot anyway, killed the engine. The night rushed in, humid, thick, pressing on my eardrums. The cicadas out there sounded wrong. Not just loud, but almost patterned, like static trying to form words. I told myself I was being stupid. I got out, stretched my legs, headed toward the vending machines. That's when I noticed the payphones. One of them had the receiver dangling, swinging gently, though there wasn't a breath of wind. The cord stretched long, shadow cutting across the concrete like a line drawn in ink. I stood there, just staring. Then, and I hate even saying this because I know how it sounds, it rang. That old metallic bell tone, sharp and hollow. Every hair on my arms shot up. I backed away fast, muttering, "Hell no, nope," under my breath. But then I heard it, the faintest voice coming from the receiver, even though it was swinging 6 feet away. Couldn't make out words. Just the rhythm of someone speaking low, like talking through static. I thought maybe it was bleed-in from a trucker's CB. But there were no trucks, no cars, not a damn soul. I turned quick and headed back to my truck. That's when I saw the building door. It was cracked open, just a sliver enough to see dark inside, and I swear in that orange light I saw a hand push it slowly wider, pale fingers curling around the edge of the metal, not rushing, not hiding, like whoever was inside wanted me to see. I didn't stay to find out. I yanked my door open, jumped in, and twisted the ignition so fast the engine coughed, slammed it into reverse, gravel crunching under my tires. As I swung back toward the exit ramp, I glanced in the mirror. The payphone receiver was still swinging, only faster now, whipping side to side like someone had just shoved it. I floored it back up the ramp. The merge onto I-35 nearly sent me into the guardrail, but once I hit the main line, everything snapped back to normal. Highway hum, a couple of taillights up ahead, the faint smell of diesel in the night air. I drove the rest of the way to Austin without stopping. Didn't even think about pulling over for gas until I hit Round Rock. Next morning I checked. Spent an hour scouring Google Maps, highway rest stop directories, even old TX files. There's nothing there south of Waco, no exit, no rest area. But here's the thing that keeps me up. When I washed my truck the next day, I noticed something on the driver's side door. Faint, but real. 4 pale prints. Too wide to be a child's, too long in the fingers to be mine, pressed into the dust like something had reached out and touched it. I scrubbed it clean, but every time I drive that stretch now, I keep my eyes locked dead ahead. Because I know, if I ever see that exit again, I might not make it back to the highway. They say the desert is quiet at night, but that's not true. Out in Pecos County, the silence is its own kind of noise. The cicadas had burned themselves out weeks earlier. The last monsoon storms of late summer had long dried up, and the only sound left was the soft rasp of wind scraping mesquite branches against the side of my rig. as I pulled over on I-10. That and the hum of tires rolling past at 75. I was dead tired. I'd been hauling produce east from El Paso, running long, stretching my hours in a way I shouldn't have, but dispatch was pushing. By the time I hit Fort Stockton, I was seeing heat shimmers on the road that weren't there. I pulled into a turnout, one of those gravel patches between the highway and the endless flat scrub, and shut her down. I just needed 20 minutes with my eyes closed. That's when I noticed the first thing. The turnout wasn't empty. Way back against the brush, angled like it had been left in a hurry, sat another semi. No lights, no driver, no movement. I thought it was odd, sure, but not impossible. Guys break down out here and wait for a tow. The desert eats engines if you're not careful with your coolant. I figured whoever it was had gone off to get help. Except the thing looked wrong. Even in the moonlight, I could see the chrome on the grill didn't catch the shine like it should have. It looked flat. Dull like old bone. I shook it off. Crawled into the sleeper, set my cheap plastic alarm for 30, and stretched out. I was halfway to sleep when I heard the horn. Low, drawn out. Not a normal blast, not the kind you give when some sedan cuts you off. This was steady. Too steady. It rattled the side mirrors. I jerked upright, smacked my head on the upper bunk. By the time I scrambled forward into the cab, the turnout was empty. No semi, no lights, just highway stretching east and west, taillights winking in the distance. I sat there sweating despite the desert chill, convincing myself I'd dreamed it. Maybe some other driver had pulled in and pulled out. Maybe the horn echoed weird off the flats. I was still telling myself that when I pulled back onto I-10. The road went on forever, out there between Fort Stockton and Ozona. It's just 2 lanes each way, asphalt black as oil, and a sky that swallows you whole. My headlights tunneled ahead, yellow cones fading into dark. That's when I saw it in my mirror. Headlights. High round ones, too close. Truckers tailgate sometimes, but this was nearly kissing my trailer. I tapped my brakes, just enough to flick my lights. No change. The rig behind me stayed glued to my bumper. I felt the rumble first, not from the road, from the air itself. Like a vibration passing through my cab, rattling loose change in the cup holder. Then came the horn. Same long, unbroken bellow. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. The mirrors shook, but the road stayed empty. No reflection, no chrome, no shadow of a cab. Just those lights. I downshifted hard, gearing down to slow, hoping the driver would pass. The lights grew brighter, higher until they filled both mirrors. Then, just like that, they blinked out. Gone. The road behind me was black again. I should have pulled over, should have called it in. But I was alone, and something deep in me didn't want a county deputy finding me white-knuckled, babbling about ghost trucks on I-10. So I kept rolling. That's when I noticed the smell. Not diesel, not rubber. Something metallic, sharp. Like blood left in the sun. It crept into the cab even with the vents closed. I gagged and cranked the window. The desert air rushed in, cool and empty, but the stink stayed. Miles blurred past. Ozona was still a ways off when the CB crackled to life. Let it pass. You won't see dawn. The voice was gravel, broken up by static. Could have been anyone, but my channel was dead quiet all night and I hadn't keyed up. I yanked the CB mic, barked out, "Say again?" Nothing. Just static. I was shaking by then, sweat running cold down my back. I kept glancing at the clock. 2:37 a.m. I remember that number like a scar. Up ahead I saw a glow. Relief washed through me. It looked like a truck stop. Neon buzzing over a gas station roof, a couple of cars, a diesel rig parked sideways across the lot. I pulled in, grateful for company. But when my tires hit the gravel, my stomach dropped. It was the same semi from the turnout. Same angle, same dull, bone-colored grill. No driver, no plate. Just sitting there like it had been waiting. I parked, on the far edge of the lot, never taking my eyes off it. I forced myself inside the station, bought a Dr. Pepper I didn't even want, just for the human contact. The clerk, some bleary-eyed kid, didn't look up from his magazine. "Whose rig is that out there?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Ain't no rig." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Right. Big white semi, grill beat to hell. You don't see that?" He flipped a page, shrugged. "Ain't no rig." I left the Dr. Pepper sweating on the counter and walked back out. The lot was empty, every space clear, gravel undisturbed. Only thing left was a smear across my trailer's rear door. Black, gritty, like an oil handprint dragged down the paint. I drove the rest of the way to San Antonio without stopping. Radio off, mirrors tilted in. It's been 27 years and I still won't let a truck pass me after dark. Because, the way I see it, if you let that rig go by, you'll never see the dawn. I've told this story a handful of times in my life, and every time I do, I feel like folks think I'm either pulling their leg or trying to scare them. I don't blame them. If I hadn't lived it, I'd probably shake my head too. But I can't shake the memory. And the strangest part is, I've since found out I wasn't the only one. It was fall of '98, cool for Midland, about 58 degrees that night. I'd been driving back from Odessa after visiting my cousin. My old Chevy S10 pickup rattled at 70 on I-20, so I kept it closer to 60, radio low, window cracked. Out there, the night feels bigger than it ought to. Black sky stretched forever, mesquite shadows crouched low to the ground, and the wind carried that dry, dusty tang that settles in your teeth. I remember passing mile marker 140, thinking about pulling over at the rest stop up ahead. Folks from around here know it. The one eastbound, a squat little building with old vending machines and those buzzing sodium lights that make everything look jaundiced. Back then, it was still open 24 hours before the state closed, half of them down. I was maybe half a mile out when I saw her. She was standing on the gravel shoulder barefoot in a pale dress that hung past her knees. At first I thought maybe she was one of those runaways you sometimes hear about, a teenager hitchhiking. She had long dark hair that stuck to her face in the wind, and she was holding her arm like she'd hurt it. I slowed down, without even thinking. I mean, it's Texas. You see somebody out there in the middle of nowhere at night, you don't just leave them. I pulled onto the shoulder, gravel popping under my tires. When I rolled down the window, she walked closer, and that's when I noticed she wasn't wearing shoes. The gravel should have torn her feet up, but she didn't limp. "Ma'am, you need a ride somewhere?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. She just stood there, maybe 6 feet from my door, staring past me into the cab like she was trying to see through it. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, almost too soft against the wind. "Can you take me east?" "Just a ways." I unlocked the door, and she slid in without hesitation, folding her hands in her lap. She smelled faintly of wet earth, like she'd just walked out of a field after rain, though it hadn't rained in weeks. I tried making small talk as I merged back onto the highway. Asked her name, where she was headed, if she was all right. She barely answered, just nodded or whispered east. I figured maybe she was in shock, maybe something had happened at home. I didn't push. We drove in silence, the hum of tires the only sound, until I passed the mile marker just past the rest stop. I glanced over to check on her, and the seat was empty. I jerked the wheel a little, heart hammering. Pulled off. At the next shoulder, headlights sweeping nothing but scrub. The passenger door was still shut tight. No sound, no trace. Just the lingering smell of damp earth. My hands shook on the steering wheel all the way into Big Spring. I told myself 100 different things. Maybe she slipped out at the rest stop when I wasn't paying attention. Maybe my eyes played tricks. But I know I felt the weight shift when she sat down. I know I heard her voice. A week later, I mentioned it to a coworker over lunch. He got real quiet and asked me what mile marker. When I told him, he nodded slowly like he already knew. "Lot of folks seen her," he said. "Barefoot girl, white dress, always asks for a ride east. They say she never makes it past the next mile marker." I laughed it off at the time, but I didn't sleep easy for months. Even now, nearly 30 years later, I can still picture her hands folded neat in her lap, dirt smudged on her knuckles like she'd clawed her way out of something. I never pick up hitchhikers anymore, and every time I pass that stretch of I-20, I keep my eyes straight ahead, 'cause part of me's scared that if I look, I'll see her waiting again. I don't know how many times I've thought about pulling over on I-10 late at night and just sleeping in the cab instead of chasing the next town. But that night I was pushing myself too far. I'd left El Paso just before dusk, and the plan was to make it as close to San Antonio as I could before sunrise. Anyone who's driven that stretch knows, once you get east of Van Horn, the desert rolls on forever, the road flat and black with nothing but headlights ahead and behind. It feels like you're the last soul left alive. I was running low on gas about 30 miles shy of Fort Stockton. The gauge needle was licking empty, and every sign said, "Next services, 40 miles. My hands were tight on the wheel, scanning for any hint of light, anything that resembled fuel. That's when I saw it. A faded exit sign half buried in shadows, letters peeling. FM 2117 service station. I took it without thinking. The road off the interstate was narrow and rough, gravel crunching under my tires. After about a mile, the shape appeared. An old, squat gas station with a flickering canopy light over a single pump. The place looked abandoned. Windows dark, paint bleached gray, sign dangling by one chain. My first thought was, I'd wasted my time. But as I idled closer, the light above the pump blinked steady, like it was trying to convince me it still worked. I rolled down the window. The air smelled dry and metallic, the kind of desert night that carries dust more than scent. Coyotes yipped far off. Everything about that stretch was silent otherwise, except my engine idling and the soft tick of cooling metal. I stepped out, boots scuffing gravel. The pump was old, Texaco style, the kind with the faded globe top. No card reader, just a cracked keypad, the buttons half sunk in. I jiggled the nozzle in my hand, half expecting it to crumble. It didn't. That's when I heard it. From inside the station, past the dark windows, a faint click. Then another, like someone flipping switches. I froze. My first thought was maybe a night clerk was inside. Maybe they'd kept the lights off to save power. I knocked on the glass, no answer. Then, just as I was about to give up, the fluorescent bulbs overhead buzzed to life. One by one, the inside lit up. Counters, racks of dust-covered chips, coolers, humming like they'd just woken up after years of sleep. And then I heard it, clear as the desert night. Someone whispered my name, not shouted, not muttered, whispered, right by the glass. I swear on my life, no one had ever called me by my name out there. I hadn't spoken to another soul in hours. I stumbled back, looking around the gravel lot, then back through the window. The aisles inside were empty. The pump clicked in my hand. I looked down. Numbers were rolling on the faded screen like it was already pumping. My truck hadn't been touched yet. The nozzle wasn't in the tank, but the gallon counter spun up, pennies ticking across the display. I dropped the handle and backed away. The counter kept spinning, fuel meter climbing with no hose connected. That's when the whisper came again. Louder. From inside. My name, but drawn out, like it was stretched too thin. I ran back to the cab, slammed the door, and threw the truck in gear. Gravel spit under the tires as I tore back toward the interstate. In my mirror, I caught one last glimpse, the canopy lights all burning now, bright as daylight. And inside, pressed against the glass where I'd knocked, a single wet handprint smeared down the window. By the time I hit the on-ramp, the gas gauge needle had moved. Up. Tank full. I didn't stop again until San Antonio. When morning came, I tried to retrace my route on a map. FM 2117 doesn't exist out there. Ask anyone in Fort Stockton. There's no service road with a station like that. I even drove back a few months. Later, broad daylight. Nothing but desert scrub and a barbed wire fence where the sign should have been. But my tank that night was full, and my truck ran another 300 miles on it. To this day, sometimes when I'm driving late, I'll hear it again, soft like someone leaning close over my shoulder, whispering my name, waiting for me to pull over. I was 23 the first time I saw it. Or maybe I should say the first time I admitted to myself that I saw it. Folks out here don't talk much about the back roads outside Lubbock unless they're swapping ghost stories after a six-pack, and even then it's more laughter than fear. But I grew up on those roads. FM 2641, County Road 6100, the old dirt stretch that runs along the cotton fields and turns red when it rains. And I know the difference between stories and something that doesn't add up. That October night, the sky was clear, stars sharp enough to cut, and the air had that dry chill you only get on the high plains in fall. Harvest time. The gins were running late, and the smell of burning cotton trash hung in the dark, mixing with dust. I had just left a buddy's place north of town after watching Tech lose again on a grainy old TV, and I decided to take the cutback road toward shallow water instead of running the loop. That's where the night started wrong. The first odd thing was the silence. Usually, even out there, you hear the hum of semis running US 84 or a coyote yipping across the flat. But all I could hear was my own tires crunching gravel. I rolled the window down, expecting the cold wind, but it was still. Dead still. About 3 miles in, I saw tracks. Not tire tracks. These were sunk deep into the red dirt shoulder like something heavy had been pacing along. At first I thought maybe a calf had gotten out, but the stride was too long, and the shape was wrong. Almost like a handprint stretched out, pressed hard enough to leave fingers. I told myself I was imagining it. Kept driving. The second oddity came not 5 minutes later. My high beams swept across the ditch line, and for half a second, I caught sight of something moving alongside me, keeping pace. Too fast for a man, too low for a deer. I slowed, and it slowed. I sped up, and it was there again. A flicker of pale motion against the cotton rows. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. Now, I've seen plenty of things out on those fields at night. Feral hogs, dogs gone wild, even kids messing around. But nothing that moved like that. It wasn't bounding like a deer, and it wasn't trotting like a coyote. It was running. On all fours. Smooth. Intent. When I finally forced myself to look straight at it, my lights caught nothing but dust. The third thing, that one I can't explain away. I was easing past the crossroads near an old windmill when something slapped the back panel of my truck. Hard, like a palm hitting metal. I swerved so bad I almost went into the bar ditch. My heart was pounding loud in my ears. I stopped right there, engine idling, gravel dust catching in the headlights. I got out. The cold hit me then, sharper than it had been a minute ago. My boots crunched down in the gravel, and I walked to the back of the truck. Clear as day, lit up in my taillights, was a handprint in the dust. Bigger than mine. Wider. The fingers splayed wrong, bent too far back like they didn't have joints where they ought to. I ran my thumb through it, half hoping it would smudge easy and look like nothing. But it was pressed in, like whoever left. It was heavier than a man ought to be. That's when I heard it breathing, not behind me. Not across the road. Under the truck. Low, steady, like a bellows with a wet rasp at the end of each inhale. I didn't think. I bolted to the driver's side, yanked the door, slammed it shut. My hands shook so bad I nearly dropped the keys. The truck roared to life and I gunned it, fishtailing on the loose gravel before the tires bit. In the mirror, for maybe 3 seconds, I saw it loping down the middle of the road after me. Long arms, back arched too high, head swinging low like it didn't quite fit. It kept pace until the dust swallowed it, and then it was gone. I didn't stop until I hit the lights of shallow water. Parked outside a gas station, shaking so hard, I could barely breathe. When I finally forced myself to get out and look, the handprint was still there on the tailgate. The next morning it was gone. Not washed, not rubbed off, just gone, like it had never been. Over the years I've heard bits and pieces from others. A cousin swore he saw something crawl across FM 179 on all fours faster than any dog could run. A rancher west of town said his calves went missing, and he found the fence bent low with finger-shaped dents in the wire. And every once in a while, after a heavy rain, you'll see tracks along the red gravel roads, wide, long striding, Too deep for a man, too wrong for a beast. I don't drive those roads alone anymore. Not after dark. And if I do, I keep my eyes forward no matter what runs alongside me in the cotton fields. Because out there, under that big high plain sky, where the dust swallows your headlights and the wind dies flat, something's waiting. Something that can keep pace. And sometimes it wants you to know it's there. It was a Tuesday night, crisp and cool for October, somewhere around 60 degrees with the air carrying that dry snap that only comes after the first real cold front of the season. I was headed north on Highway 6, just outside of Waco, pushing my old '89 Silverado toward College Station where my younger brother was living at the time. The highway was empty, nothing but the long sweep of asphalt and the glow of my high beams catching the reflective mile markers, each one ticking off like a metronome. 331, 332, 333. Then came 334. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. There was a figure standing perfectly still right on the shoulder. A man, or maybe a woman, hard to tell from the distance. Just standing there, feet set together like a soldier at attention. I slowed down. The thing didn't move, didn't wave, didn't step back. Just stood there with its face angled toward me. My headlights caught it full on. That's when it smiled. Not a wave, not a nod. Just a wide, unnatural smile that spread too slow, too deliberate, like it was waiting for me to notice. I hit the gas, heart hammering, and didn't let off until I'd passed 3 more mile markers. By the time I reached 337, I couldn't see it anymore in the mirrors. That was the first oddity, and honestly, I wanted to write it off. Folks along Highway 6 used to talk about drifters, hitchhikers, people wandering at night who didn't belong anywhere. Maybe it was just some drunk out by the road. Maybe. But then it happened again. 2 weeks later, driving the same stretch, same late hour. I hadn't meant to be out there so late, but a job at the feed store kept me later than I'd planned. The air was even colder that night, about 55 degrees with a mist rolling in low over the Brazos. Sure enough, when I hit 334, there it was again. Same stance, same stillness, same goddamn smile. This time I didn't slow down. I tried to keep my eyes straight ahead, but it's hard not to look when something is watching you that hard. I swear. Its head turned just slightly as I passed, following me. The third time I told myself I wouldn't look. That lasted all of 10 seconds. 34 came up like a dare, and my curiosity beat my good sense. But the figure wasn't on the shoulder this time. It was standing in the grass median between northbound and southbound lanes, directly under the green reflective sign that said 334. Standing straight, arms at its side, head tilted back like it was studying the sky. When my headlights swept over it, the face turned toward me, and that smile came again. Slower this time, stretching like it hurt to make it. My stomach dropped. I pressed down on the accelerator, tires whining against the asphalt. By the 4th time, I wasn't alone. My buddy Travis was with me, riding shotgun after a Friday night football game in Temple. We'd gone to grab a late bite and were heading home. I didn't say a word about 334. Didn't want to spook him or make myself sound crazy. But when we reached that mile marker, his body tensed in the seat. "Hey," he said quietly. "You see that?" I didn't want to look, but I did. The figure was there again. Only this time it was standing in the middle of the right lane, dead center of the pavement. Not moving, not flinching as we barreled toward it. I swerved, nearly clipped the guardrail, and when I whipped my head back around, the lane was empty. Travis was white as a sheet. "Man," he whispered. "What the hell was that?" Neither of us spoke the rest of the drive. After that, I avoided Highway 6 whenever I could. But sometimes you can't help it. It's the straightest shot south. Over the years, I've collected little scraps of testimony from folks who swore they'd seen something at 334. A trucker who told me he braked hard when a man appeared in the lane, only to vanish as his rig shuttered past. A woman from Mart who claimed she saw a figure in the ditch that waved her down. then disappeared into thin air. But the most unsettling came from an older rancher who lived not far from there. He told me he'd found footprints once, bare footprints pressed into the clay right at the edge of the asphalt by the 334 sign. Only one set, leading out of the grass, stopping dead on the shoulder. No return prints, no vehicle nearby, just ended. I went back myself one last time, years later in 2003. Don't ask me why. Morbid curiosity, maybe. I parked on the shoulder, with my hazard lights blinking right there under the mile marker, stepped out into the night air. The cicadas were buzzing, and somewhere out there, coyotes yipped at the moon. The air smelled like cut hay and diesel. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes. Nothing. No figure. No smile. But when I finally climbed back into the truck and glanced at the passenger seat, my stomach turned cold. The seatbelt was buckled. I hadn't touched it. That was the last time I drove that stretch of Highway 6 after midnight. To this day, I won't slow down at 334. I won't even look at the shoulder. But every time I pass it, always in daylight now, always in a hurry, I swear I can feel eyes following me, waiting for me to make the mistake of stopping. And I know deep down that if I ever do, it'll smile again. I'll never forget the sound that night, the way the sand moved against metal like it was alive, crawling over everything. Folks out here call it a haboob, though I never heard that word growing up. To me, it was just one of those desert storms that could roll in without warning, drown headlights, and leave grit in your teeth for days. I'd been driving back west on I-10 from a late run into Van Horn. I haul auto parts for a little outfit in El Paso, nothing glamorous, just long miles and caffeine. The wind had picked up around Sierra Blanca, and by the time I got past Fort Hancock, it was like driving blind. My truck's old, a '98 Chevy Silverado, and the wipers don't do a damn thing against sand. The air was thick with it, brown, choking, alive. I pulled off at a little rest stop, one of those forgotten ones with a busted Coke machine and a single streetlight buzzing over the concrete. It was close to 3 a.m., and I was bone tired. I figured I'd let the storm pass a little, shut my eyes, then keep going. I leaned back in the seat, cracked the window just enough to breathe, and let the desert noise fill the cab. The wind howled. Across the flat nothingness, sand ticking against glass and paint like tiny claws. You'd think there'd be nothing out there, but I swear I heard movement. Something dragging across gravel, too heavy to be the wind, too light to be a groan. Man, at first I wrote it off. Out here your mind plays tricks. Coyote maybe. A stray dog sniffing around. But then came a soft patter, like fingertips on metal. I froze. It came from the hood. Slow. Deliberate. Like somebody testing the surface of my truck, tapping 1, 2, 3 times. My heart went full throttle. I didn't move. Didn't even breathe too loud. I sat there for I don't know how long, gripping the steering wheel, staring at that weak cone of light from the street lamp. The storm started to die down, sand settling into a thin layer over the windshield. The patter stopped. Silence, except for the ticking of grit in the wind. When I finally worked up the nerve, I switched on the headlights. Nothing but the haze of dust in the air. I reached for the door handle, hand trembling. The second I stepped out, the air hit me, dry, sharp, carrying the faintest smell of wet earth even though no rain had fallen. I circled around, boots crunching on sand. That's when I saw it. Across the hood of my truck, clear as day in the fresh layer of dust, were handprints. Not one. Not two. A scatter of them. Dozens. Small. Too small. Like a child's. They weren't smeared like from falling grit or blowing branches. They were pressed, in deep, deliberate, the outlines sharp where the fingers had dragged down the metal. A couple of them overlapped, like whoever or whatever had pressed them was climbing, pulling, touching all over. But here's the part that still makes my skin crawl. They were fresh. The storm had been howling for hours, sand pelting everything. There's no way those prints could have lasted unless they'd been made after the worst had passed, which meant something had been there. While I was sitting inside, I backed up so quick I nearly tripped over myself. My headlights caught the rest stop bench, the Coke machine, the lonely trash can. Nothing moved. The desert stretched out dark and endless, the horizon still hidden under a wall of dust. I didn't stay, slammed the door, started the engine, and drove like hell. I didn't even look at the hood again until morning, when the sun came up just outside El Paso. By then, the handprints were gone, wiped away clean like the storm had never happened. But I'll tell you the truth, and I swear it on my life. When I stopped for gas at the Chevron on Alameda, I caught something in the side mirror. For just a split second, a smudge, like a greasy streak, running down the glass. Looked like 4 fingers dragged down from the top edge. I cleaned it off, but I don't think it was dirt. I've driven that stretch 100 times since, but I never stop at that rest area anymore. Not even in daylight. Folks say the desert's full of ghosts. That kids from old border camps and accidents along the interstate still wander, still looking for a way out. I don't know about that, but I know what I saw. And I know the sound of fingers tapping on a hood soft as a whisper, even when there's no one there. And every time a storm kicks up out past Fabens, I still check my mirrors, half expecting to see tiny handprints pressed into the dust. I was headed west on I-40 just past the Amarillo city limits when I first heard him. The preacher. The night was dry, cold enough that the heater in my old Ford pickup kept fogging the windshield if I left it running too warm. Out there, the land spreads flat as a plate. No hills to catch the headlights. Just empty black fields stretching forever under a pale sliver of moon. You can smell the dirt in the panhandle. Clay and dust mixed with a faint tang of feedlots when the wind shifts. At that hour, the highway was almost dead. No 18-wheelers rumbling beside me, no taillights up ahead. Just my tires humming over the asphalt and the occasional green reflective glint of a mile marker. I had the radio dial set low, mostly, just for company. Amarillo stations fade quick once you get past the loop, and all I was pulling in was static with little bursts of music. George Strait breaking up, some Tejano station in Spanish, then nothing but hissing. I remember leaning forward, tapping the knob, trying to land on something clear. That's when the voice came through. It wasn't like a DJ, it wasn't part of a song or an ad. Just a man's voice, calm but scratchy, carried on the static like he was talking straight into the cab with me. "Son, I know you hear me." I thought it was some preacher on a late-night AM band, the kind my granddad used to listen to while sharpening knives on the porch, but then he said my name. My first name, not the full thing, just the way my mama used to say it when I was a kid. I remember my chest going cold. I laughed a little at myself, shook my head, told myself I must have misheard. Static can play tricks, make words where there ain't any. I kept driving. The radio stayed on, the voice drifting in and out like it was chasing me down the road. Sermon words mostly. Judgment, fire, the wages of sin. But each time it bled through the noise, I swore I caught my name again. Sometimes stretched, sometimes whispered like the man's lips were right behind my ear. I tried to twist the dial, but the voice was everywhere. Every frequency. By the time I reached the Cadillac Ranch exit, my hands were sweating on the wheel. I pulled off onto the shoulder and just sat there with the engine running. Out there, you can hear everything. The dry wind scraping over grass, a far-off coyote yipping. I switched the radio off completely, left nothing but silence. That should have ended it. But it didn't. Because a moment later, even with the radio dead, I heard him again. Not through the speakers, through the cab, through the air itself, like he was sitting in the dark beside me. "Look to your left." I wish I hadn't. There was a man standing out in the field, maybe 30 yards off, half lit by my headlights. He wasn't moving, wasn't walking closer, just standing with his head tilted like he'd been waiting on me the whole time. I couldn't see his face. His coat or robe, I don't know, was whipping in the wind that I couldn't even feel. I floored it back onto the highway, gravel spitting under my tires, and didn't stop till the Oklahoma line. When I finally pulled into a Love's truck, Stop around 2 a.m., I forced myself to check the radio. It was nothing but ordinary static again. No voice, no sermon. But there was one thing that didn't sit right. The digital clock on the dash read 12:04, same as when I first heard him. The receipt from the truck stop, gas, coffee, a pack of Marlboros, was time-stamped 2:11 a.m. Somewhere on that black stretch of I-40, I lost 2 hours of my life. And every so often, late at night when I'm driving west past Amarillo, I still turn the dial just to check. Sometimes, if the wind is right, I can hear the faint edge of a sermon bleeding through. And every time, before I shut it off, I swear I hear my name. I've lived in East Texas all my life, and the Trinity's always been there. Wide, muddy, slow as honey, but just as heavy, winding its way through bottomland and pine. Folks grow up fishing off its banks, skipping rocks, drinking cheap beer, on its sandbars. But ask anybody who's had to cross it late at night, and you'll notice they get a little quiet, like they're recalling something they'd rather not. Back in '97, I was 23, and working nights at a feed mill outside of Huntsville. Money wasn't much, but the overtime kept my bills paid. Most nights I'd clock out around 1 in the morning, drive the back road south toward my folks' place near Riverside. That meant crossing the old steel truss bridge over the Trinity, the one on Highway 19 before they tore it down years later. Back then it rattled like loose bones when you drove across, and in the fog, the thing looked like it could fold in on itself any second. That night, October 18th, the air had that wet chill that only comes in fall after a humid day. The forecast had said clear skies, but out there the river bottoms make their own weather. I'd left the mill with my windshield already fogging up and my jacket still smelling like corn dust. By the time I hit the turnoff toward Riverside, it was nothing but thick, low fog and a silence so heavy I could hear my tires on the asphalt over the hum of the radio. I slowed down at the bridge. Always did. Even in daylight it felt wrong somehow, the way the trusses boxed you in. The water black underneath, no shoulder to pull off on. That night, though, it was worse. The fog swallowed both ends, so I couldn't even see the other side. Just two pale beams of my headlights disappearing into white nothing. I told myself what I always told myself. It's just a bridge, same as in the day. Folks cross it every hour. I eased onto it, tires humming against the grates, steering wheel trembling in my hands. Halfway across, I noticed something strange. The sound changed. On a steel deck bridge, you always hear that steady thrum, a kind of echo bouncing under your tires. But suddenly it went hollow. Not louder or softer, just empty, like the road had nothing under it. I glanced at my rear view and froze. The bridge behind me was gone. Not hidden in fog, not faded, gone. My taillights glowed against nothing but white mist, and past that, black water. The trusses, the steel beams, even the little reflectors bolted to the rails, gone. I swear to God, it was like the whole back half of the bridge had never been there. I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles hurt, telling myself it was the fog, that my eyes were playing tricks. But when I looked forward, the road ahead didn't look much better. The grating beneath my headlights just faded. 20 feet out, it was gone, like someone had taken a knife and cut the bridge in half. All that remained was a glowing edge of metal in the mist, and beyond that, blackness. My foot hovered over the brake, but I didn't dare stop. I just kept creeping forward, 30, maybe 25 miles an hour, leaning forward like that'd help. Every foot I drove, the bridge reappeared under my tires, one section at a time. But behind me, nothing. Just that long stretch of river swallowing it all. I remember saying out loud, "Don't look back, don't look back." But of course, I did. And when I did, I saw something that still makes my stomach turn. There were wet handprints on my back glass. Not smudges from dew, not streaks from rain. These were clear, defined, 5-fingered handprints sliding down like someone had pressed their palms hard against the window and dragged them slow. The prints glistened under the red glow of my taillights, fresh, dripping. By the time I made it off the bridge and back on asphalt, I floored it. Didn't matter the fog, didn't matter the deer that could have been out there. I just drove. My heart felt like it was trying to rip out through my throat. I didn't slow down until I hit the lights of Riverside, and even then I sat in the empty gas station lot with the engine running, too scared to breathe. When I finally climbed out, I checked the glass. The prints were gone. Bone dry, like nothing had ever touched it. I told myself 100 excuses in the weeks after. Fog condensation, nerves, fatigue. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. Funny thing is, a year later, the county finally shut that bridge down. Said the steel was failing, that it wasn't safe for heavy trucks anymore. They built a new concrete span downstream, wide enough for 2 lanes with shoulders. Folks don't talk much about the old one now, but every so often I'll hear a trucker at the Riverside diner mention something. Headlights vanishing halfway across, radios cutting out, that feeling like you're driving on air instead of steel. And one fella swore he saw a woman standing, dead center on the bridge one foggy night, barefoot, dripping wet, staring him down until she vanished in his high beams. Me, I don't cross the Trinity after midnight anymore. Not on any bridge. Some things you just don't test twice. And I can't forget that hollow sound under my tires, like the road wasn't there at all. I used to think folks who told ghost stories about highways were just trying to scare teenagers into driving safe. My uncle, for instance, swore up and down that he'd seen a phantom hitchhiker out near Marble Falls back in the 70s. But he'd also drink Pearl beer for breakfast, so I never took him too serious. But what I'm about to tell you happened to me, and I can't shake it. Not after all these years. It was fall of '97, and I'd just gotten my first pickup, a faded blue '89 Chevy Silverado with a bench seat and a stereo that only half worked. I'd been living in Austin for school, working nights at a Whataburger off Ben White, trying to scrape by. One of the other cooks, Luis, told me about this old road out by Oak Hill that used to be a cut-through before the city shut it down. Said it had been the site of some pileup in the '60s where a bunch of folks burned alive. You can still hear it sometimes, he said, grinning at me through a cloud of fryer smoke. I didn't believe him, but I was restless one night after, a shift too wired on Dr. Pepper and grease smell to sleep. It was cool out, mid-60s, that kind of crisp October air you don't get too often around Austin. I remember the moon was hanging low, bright enough to make the mesquite cast long shadows. I decided to drive out there just to see. The cutoff he told me about wasn't marked on most maps anymore. You had to take 290 west, then peel off onto a cracked stretch of road half swallowed by weeds. The sign was bent, covered in graffiti. I eased the Chevy down it, my headlights bouncing over potholes and busted asphalt. On either side, cedar trees crowded in tight, their branches scratching at my mirrors like bony fingers. At first it was just quiet, too quiet. No highway noise, no crickets, not even the usual night sounds of Texas. I killed the radio, rolled the window down, tried to listen. Nothing. That silence pressed in heavy. I told myself it was just overgrown, sound getting caught up in the brush. But then I heard it. Faint, distant at first. Tires squealing. Just a short, high-pitched shriek like brakes locking up. My stomach dropped. I cut the wheel hard, parked right there in the middle of the road, engine idling. It came again. Louder this time. Long, drawn out, like someone slamming a car into a stop they weren't gonna make. Then nothing. Dead silence. I sat there gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. I wanted to laugh it off, tell myself maybe there was a house nearby, some kids messing around. But the closest lights were miles off, and I knew damn well no one was joyriding on a dead-end road with grass growing through the cracks. I rolled, forward another 100 yards. That's when I saw it, the faintest shimmer across the pavement like heat mirage in summer, except it was cool enough I could see my breath. My headlights flickered, dimmed like the alternator was failing. And then I smelled it. Burnt rubber, burnt oil, and something else under it, sharp, metallic, like blood in the back of your throat. I froze. The sound came back, right in front of me this time. Tires screaming, brakes fighting, metal crunching, but there was no car, just the empty road stretching ahead. My whole truck rattled like something huge had just passed by. I swear on my life, the steering wheel jerked in my hands, not from me, like something invisible had clipped the front end. My Chevy shuddered, headlights flashing white across the cedar. When I finally got it to stop, I jumped out with my flashlight, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd puke. There were skid marks, black, fresh, stretching across the pavement right where I'd stopped. Only, they weren't mine. My tires were clean. I crouched down, ran my hand across the marks, expecting them to smear like tar. They didn't. They felt cold. Oily, but cold, like touching old iron. That's when I heard the voices. Not clear. Not words. Just this tangled chorus of shouts and screams carried on the wind. Men, women, all jumbled together. I whipped the light around, but there was nothing in the cedar but shadows. My beam caught a bit of glass glittering by the ditch, and I thought it was a beer bottle until I picked it up. It was a headlight shard. Old. Yellowed with age, edges dulled like it had been sitting there 30 years. That was enough for me. I tossed it, climbed back in the Chevy, and floored it. The whole way back, I kept glancing in the mirror, half expecting to see headlights bearing down on me. But there was only blackness. By the time I hit 290 again, I was shaking so bad I had to pull into a Valero and just sit under the fluorescent lights until I felt like I could breathe again. Next morning, I checked my truck in daylight. On the front bumper, right near the grill, there was a dent I'd never seen before. Small, sharp, like where another fender had clipped it. The paint was scraped down to the metal. I asked my buddy if he'd noticed it before, but he swore it wasn't there the day prior. I never went back, not once. Folks say the city buried that road under a new development a few years later, but I don't buy it. Some nights, if you're west of Austin with the windows down, you'll still hear it. Tires screaming in the dark, brakes crying out, the last echo of a crash that never stops happening. And I swear, sometimes when I'm driving late, even now I catch that smell again. Burnt rubber, burnt oil, blood in the throat, like it's following me. I used to make that drive a lot, back when I lived in Arlington but worked late shifts at a warehouse closer to Irving. Anyone who's ever run I-30 eastbound past midnight knows how empty it gets once the stadium lights fade in the rear view. The road feels stretched, wider than it should be, like the dark's got a way of swallowing the edges. That night, it was cool for October, high 50s, maybe 60 degrees, with a little dampness from rain earlier in the evening. I had the window cracked just enough to hear the steady hiss of tires on wet asphalt and the faint rush of 18-wheelers miles ahead. Every so often, a whip of cold air carried that smell of wet pavement, metallic, almost electric. I wasn't tired, but the highway lull works on you. Fluorescent exit signs flicker by in intervals, little green reminders of places you're not stopping. I had the radio low, some late-night preacher station fading in and out, and my headlights cutting a weak tunnel through the mist. It started just past Grand Prairie. In my mirror, I caught a light. Not two, just one. At first, I figured motorcycle. Nothing unusual. But as minutes went by, it didn't gain, didn't fall back. Just hung there, steady as a nail in the dark. I switched lanes once, just to see. So did it. Same distance. There's a point on that stretch where the interstate dips and the overpass muffles the sky for a second. I watched that lone headlight disappear as I went under, and I thought, all right, maybe they exited. But when the road opened again, there it was, closer now. My skin prickled. I tapped my brakes lightly. The light responded, dipping with me. Not a motorcycle. I could tell by the way it bobbed, not side to side, but up and down, like it was floating. Then I noticed something else. Silence. My radio fuzzed out to static even though I hadn't touched the dial. The highway hum seemed distant, muffled, like someone pressed a hand over my ears. I remember rolling the window lower, trying to catch the normal sounds again, but all I heard was the soft rasp of wind and that faint thrum of my own tires. I don't scare easy. I grew up hunting, spent nights out on leased land with nothing but coyotes for company. But that light, steady, unblinking, worked on me. Every instinct I had said not to pull over, not to stop. So I did the opposite. I took the next exit. It way was one of those lonely ramps, looping down to a farm-to-market road. No street lamps, just reflective markers shining pale. I slowed, heart knocking in my throat, and watched the mirror. The headlight followed, curving down behind me. I pulled onto the shoulder, killed my own lights, and sat in the dark. My truck ticked as the engine cooled, breath fogging the cab. That headlight rolled closer, closer, until it was maybe 30 yards back. Then it just blinked out. No sound of an engine passing, no spray of gravel, nothing. Just gone. I sat there longer than I should have, waiting for taillights, waiting for anything. Eventually, I turned the key again. Headlights, sweeping across the empty FM road. There was no car, no bike, just the wet blacktop shining back at me. When I made it home, I saw something I still don't have a good answer for. On my bumper, near the license plate, was a handprint. Clear as day. Muddy, wet, and too big to be mine. I scrubbed it off the next morning, told myself it was just grime from the road. But every time I make that drive, if I make it late, I catch myself checking the mirror more than I should, half expecting to see that lone headlight burning steady behind me. And when I do, I keep driving, I don't stop anymore. The first time I saw him, he was standing just outside of Livingston, where Highway 59 cuts a long dark vein through the piney woods. His figure came into my headlights all at once, like the road had coughed him up from nothing. Tall, thin, clothes hanging loose like he'd been sweating through them for days. And in his hand, held against his chest, was a Bible. Not tucked under his arm, not carried casual, pressed tight, like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Now, folks, around here they'll tell you hitchhikers are trouble. Drugs, parole jumpers, or worse. I'd grown up with my dad saying, "Don't pick up no stranger after dark, not on 59. But back then I was 20, stupid, and trying to outrun my own life. I figured helping somebody else might feel like something good. He didn't smile when I slowed and leaned across to push the passenger door open. He just ducked in, Bible first, and sat stiff as a post. No thanks, no small talk. He smelled like pine sap and sweat, with this sharp metallic tang I couldn't place. I remember thinking it was like old pennies in the heat. "Where you headed?" I asked, voice breaking the silence. He looked at me, and I swear his eyes were clouded, not blind exactly, but pale, like river water over silt. "North," he said. Just that. North could have meant anything. Nacogdoches, Texarkana, the goddamn Oklahoma line. I didn't press him. We rode quiet, the tires humming, the trees pressing close on both sides. After maybe 10 miles, he spoke again. His voice was low, like he was reading from that book, but without looking down. "Do you know the wages of sin?" It was the kind of question a preacher might toss out mid-sermon, but it didn't land like a sermon. It landed cold. I tried to joke it off. "Buddy, if you're fixin' to preach, you picked the wrong ride." He didn't laugh, didn't blink, just held the Bible tighter. That was the first oddity. I told myself he was just some backwoods revival type, maybe walking to the next town, maybe not right in the head. But then came the second. We passed Shepherd, little cluster of lights off to the right, and I noticed his hand. The Bible cover was worn, black leather gone soft from years of grip, but his fingers pressing it, long, too long, joints knobby, nails pale like chalk. They tapped slow, rhythm steady, like a clock that didn't belong in my car. I cleared my throat, switched on the radio just to break it. Static, then George Strait crooning out of Livingston's FM. He reached over, didn't ask, and turned, the dial down so low I could only hear the hiss. Then he whispered along, not the song but words that didn't fit, something like scripture but twisted, off. That was the third oddity, and I felt my scalp prickle. I told him I had to stop for gas in Corrigan, thinking I'd let him off there. He nodded slow, like he already knew. The Conoco was empty, just the night clerk behind glass, fluorescent buzzing. I stepped out, left him in the car, tried to shake off the unease. When I glanced back through the windshield, he was turned full. Toward me, those pale eyes steady, lips moving around words I couldn't hear. That was when I saw it. The Bible was upside down. I didn't get back in right away. I filled slow, made like I was checking my tires. But eventually I opened the door again, because leaving him there felt worse than carrying him further. He didn't mention it, just placed the book back against his chest, right side up this time. Past Corrigan, the woods thickened, pines leaning so close they seemed to claw at the dark. The road was near empty, just me, the hitchhiker, and the endless hum of asphalt. I started counting the mile markers to keep steady. 94, 95, 96, and then 95 again. I blinked, swore I'd misread it. But a few minutes later, there it was again, mile marker 95. I slowed, craned my neck, certain I was losing it. The hitchhiker didn't move, didn't look out the window, just said, real soft, "They never get past 95, slammed on the brakes. The car fishtailed, tires shrieking against the empty highway. My hands were shaking on the wheel. "What the hell did you just say?" He didn't answer. I looked down, maybe 2 seconds tops, fumbling for the gear shift. When I looked back up, he was gone. The passenger seat was empty. Door closed. No sound. Just the faint, stale smell of sweat and pennies, and something left behind. Pressed into the cracked vinyl seat was the faint outline of a handprint. Long, bony fingers splayed like someone had leaned hard there, but it wasn't dust or sweat. It was wet. Sticky. When I touched it, my fingers came back red. Blood. I spun around, scanning the dark. Nothing but trees. Cicadas buzzing. The distant roar of an 18-wheeler far down the line. I drove the rest of the way to Lufkin in silence. Knuckles white on the wheel, mile markers blurring. I never saw 97, just 95 over and over until the lights of town broke through. I didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe me? Some kid picking up a drifter with a Bible and coming back with blood on the seat. But then, weeks later, I heard folks at the truck stop talking, drivers swapping ghost tales. One mentioned a man on 59, always northbound, always carrying a Bible. "Pick him up," he said, "and you don't make it past mile 95. They said the sheriff's office had reports going back years. Disappearances, cars found abandoned along the stretch between Corrigan and Lufkin. No driver, no passengers, just an open Bible left on the seat. I don't know why he let me go. Maybe because I noticed. Maybe because I braked. Maybe because I was too damn scared to keep driving straight. But I can tell you this. I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. Not on 59. Not anywhere. And every time I head north, past Livingston, I keep my eyes glued straight ahead. Because sometimes, when the fog settles low in the pines, I swear I still see him standing there, Bible pressed tight, waiting. I grew up hearing the same warning every kid around Tom Green County did. Don't stop when you see faces on the fence line at night. Folks said it started as a ranch hand's tale to scare kids off trespassing, but it stuck around too long. Got repeated too often and carried just enough truth to keep people from laughing it off. Back then I was 22, working evenings stocking shelves at a feed store off Knickerbocker. I'd take the long way home, cutting through the 2-lane farm road south of San Angelo instead of dealing with Bryant traffic. Those nights were cool enough to roll the windows down, let the mesquite-scented air blow in and hear the cicadas hum like static under the stars. That night, the kind where the moon looks bruised behind thin clouds, I noticed the barbed wire fence running along the road glinting in my headlights. Nothing unusual. Most of the county's ringed in rusted wire and cedar posts. But for a split second I thought I saw somebody standing on the other side, pale face catching the light. I slowed down. My first thought was cows. Ranchers lost, calves now and then, and I'd seen them press against the wire before, but this wasn't that. Whatever it was didn't move when my truck rumbled closer. It just stayed there, between the T-posts, dead still. I kept driving. By the time I passed the second pasture, I saw another one. Same thing. White face in the dark, right where the fence cut across a low ditch. This time, I caught enough detail to swear it wasn't just my headlights playing tricks, eyes reflecting like glass too big for a deer. I told myself it was nothing. Tricks of light, moon on the wire, long shift, tired eyes, but by the third one, I couldn't shake it. There, it was again, 10 miles from town where the mesquite thins out into open field. A figure pressed to the fence, head tilted, staring like it had been waiting just for me. I eased off the gas. The road was empty both ways. Nothing but a freight train's horn miles off and the hum of my tires. My high beams cut across the grass, and I swear to God for the smallest beat I saw fingers hooked around the barbed wire. Not snagged, not struggling, just holding on. I didn't stop. I punched the accelerator and watched the odometer climb until the fences disappeared behind me. When I finally made it home, gravel popping under the tires, I felt that pit in my stomach, the kind you get when you know you've seen something you can't explain. I parked under the floodlight, left the truck running while I smoked, trying to steady myself. Next morning, I did what any dumb kid would. I went back. Broad daylight, coffee in hand. I drove the same stretch slow. Nothing. Out of place. Fence was intact. Grass trampled in spots, sure, but that's ranch land. I was just about ready to laugh it off when I saw it. On one of the cedar posts, about chest high, the wood had fresh marks. 4 long, parallel grooves like something had pressed down hard enough to cut through weathered bark. Too even to be. Barbed wire. Too deep to be cattle. I never drove that way again after dark. And I never forgot the faces, silent, waiting, holding on to the fence line like they had all the time in the world. I'll never forget the first time I saw it. Out on 385 north of Fort Stockton, the desert is so wide and bare that you start to think your headlights don't reach far enough, like the darkness itself is swallowing the beams. I'd been running trucks for a little over 6 years back then, and I knew that stretch well. Flat scrub, mesquite, long miles without a soul in sight. That night I was just hauling down toward Odessa after a late pickup, coffee in my lap, windows cracked to keep me alert. And then, in the distance, past the barbed fences and low ridges, I saw a tower. At first I figured it was one of those old windmill stands ranchers use, but as I drew closer it wasn't shaped right. This one had stone walls, blocky and pale, rising maybe 30 feet up from the dirt. The kind of thing you'd expect to find in some medieval ruin, not West Texas ranch country. A lantern glowed faintly behind one of the narrow windows near the top. I slowed a little, confused. I'd driven this road dozens of times and there had never been any structure like that out there. Nothing but empty grazing land and old fence posts. I told myself maybe I'd just never noticed before. Maybe I'd always passed at daylight. Maybe it belonged to some old ranch that had fallen apart. But I couldn't shake it. That tower didn't look abandoned. It looked occupied. 2 weeks later, I asked around about it while fueling up outside Fort Stockton. One of the older guys, Ray, gave me a puzzled look when I mentioned a tower with a lantern. "There ain't no tower out there." "Man," he said, "not on 385. Closest thing's that busted windmill about 10 miles north. Maybe you saw that." But I knew what I'd seen. This wasn't some crooked metal frame against the horizon. This was stone, solid, square, with a glow like kerosene, light in the window. I didn't press it, didn't want to sound like I was losing it, but the image stuck with me, clearer than a dream, sharper than a memory I wanted to shake. The next time I passed through was November. Same route, later hour, cold, dry wind rattling the cab. I kept my eyes peeled. For miles, there was nothing but desert dark, the occasional fence post catching my lights. And then there it was. Same tower, same faint glow in the window. This time, though, the lantern seemed brighter, almost like it had been set out to be seen. My stomach tightened. I slowed down hard, half tempted to pull over and look closer. But something in me resisted, like a dog bristling before a rattlesnake. As I rolled past, I thought I saw movement behind the window. Just a shift, a shadow, someone or something standing in that watchtower, looking down on the highway. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe an old hunting stand, fixed up by some rancher. Maybe kids messing around, setting a lantern out to spook drivers. But when I asked again, weeks later, no one admitted to knowing about it. Ranchers along that stretch swore there was nothing out there but grazing land and dust. "You sure you weren't just tired?" one of the guys at the truck stop asked. "Lot of mirages in the desert, tricks of the headlights, except mirages don't cast steady light, and they don't hold silhouettes." It escalated one night in December. Cold enough that the windshield had a thin frost when I started. I'd been running late, trying to make up time. The road was quiet, just that endless hum of tires on asphalt. Then I saw it again. This time, the lantern wasn't just glowing. It was swinging, back and forth, slow, deliberate, like someone was pacing with it. I couldn't take my eyes off it. My truck drifted a little onto the shoulder before I caught myself. As I straightened the wheel, my radio crackled with static, loud, sharp, filling the cab. My CB had been quiet all night, no chatter, and suddenly it was nothing but harsh noise, like someone breathing too close to the mic. I twisted the knob, trying to clear it, but it stayed until I passed the tower. And as soon as it disappeared into the dark behind me, the radio cut off. Silence. I didn't touch that dial again the rest of the drive. After that, I stopped asking folks about it. Some things you learn to keep to yourself. But I did start paying closer attention. I noticed it only ever appeared at night. Daytime runs? Nothing. Not a stone, not a shadow of a foundation. Just grassland and dirt, like it was never there at all. And it always showed up at about the same stretch, give or take a mile marker. Between 47 and 50, right where the land dips before the low ridges. One January run, I actually slowed down, damn near stopping, trying to catch more detail. The lantern was steady that night, glowing warm in the blackness. I swear I could see rough stone blocks stacked, weathered edges, and an opening at the base. A door. But when I reached for my phone, this was back when flip phones barely had cameras. The light blinked out. 1 second it was there. Next it was gone. Nothing but the flat dark of desert night. I didn't sleep when I finally stopped. Just sat in the cab, shaking, trying to make sense of what I'd seen vanish in plain sight. The last time was February 1989. Cold, windy night, stars sharp overhead. I'd almost convinced myself it wouldn't show, that maybe it was gone for, good. But as I crested a rise, there it was. The lantern burned brighter than ever, casting an orange glow through the narrow slit of the window. My heart hammered. I tightened my grip on the wheel, and then the radio came alive again. Not static this time. Voices, low, garbled, like a dozen people whispering over each other. I couldn't make out a word, but the cadence was steady, almost chanting. I turned, the volume down, but the whispers stayed loud as ever, filling the cab. My headlights flickered, dimming for just a second. I passed the tower. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure at the window. Just a pale face, watching. When I looked, again it was gone, and when I glanced at my dashboard clock and it had jumped back 6 minutes. I know because I'd checked not long before. I've never run that stretch at night again. If I can't avoid it, I make damn sure I'm through before sundown. Folks still say there's no tower, never was. No ruins, no watch posts, nothing. But scrubland out there. I've even looked on maps, checked county records, not a single mention of a stone tower near 385. But I know what I saw. More than once. And I know what I felt every time that lantern swung, every time that radio came alive with voices. There's something out there in the dark, standing guard where nothing should be. And if you ever find yourself on that stretch of road, late at night, look toward the horizon. If you see a faint orange glow in a window too high for any ranch house, don't slow down. Don't look too long. Just keep driving. I don't usually talk about this stretch of road, and I damn sure don't like thinking about it. But if you've ever driven I-45 at night near Huntsville, maybe you'll understand why. Folks around here call it the dead lane. You won't find that on any map, but troopers, truckers, even the folks who run the Buc-ee's off exit 118, they know. They just don't like saying it out loud. It starts out ordinary enough. I'd been hauling back from Dallas to Houston after dropping off some welding equipment for a contractor. Old Chevy 3500, long bed, packed light this time. The air that night was the kind of sticky October warmth that still clings to you even after sunset. 76 degree, with that faint sweetness of pine drifting in from the Sam Houston National Forest. You could hear the cicadas screaming if you rolled your window down. It was just another Texas night on the interstate, except for that one lane. I'd heard about it before, usually in the form of half-joking warnings from other drivers. Don't ride the right lane south of Huntsville after midnight. Cold runs through it. I chalked it up to highway folklore, the same way folks say not to stop on certain FM roads after dark because of goatmen or black dogs. You hear enough truck stop talk and it all runs together. But around mile marker 239 it happened. I was cruising steady in the middle lane, radio low, a bottle of Big Red sweating in the cup holder, when I noticed the right lane shimmer, not from heat, from something else. My headlights hit the asphalt, and instead of the usual dull gray, it looked slick, darker, almost wet. No rain had fallen in weeks. The sky was clear. Still, I merged right, just curious. The temperature dropped instantly. Not like a breeze through the cab or a cool draft off the woods. No, it hit like a walk-in freezer door opening. My windshield fogged faintly at the edges, the kind of frost haze you don't see in October in East Texas. I leaned forward, blinked, rubbed at the glass, checked the thermostat on the dash. Outside temp still reading 76 degree. Inside, my breath came out white. I thought maybe the truck was slipping coolant or the AC had kicked something strange, but then I felt it in my bones. A deep, marrow cold that sank past denim and skin, something no engine could cause. The first odd thing I saw was a glove. Left lane, just off the shoulder. A work glove, stiff and upright, like someone had dropped it mid-step and it froze. There. I passed it fast, trying to shake the unease, but then came another. A boot. Then a crushed soda can, glinting like it was half buried in frost. I glanced in the rear view and froze. The road behind me, in that lane, looked empty. Not just less traffic. Gone. The headlights I'd seen trailing me for miles were gone. The taillights ahead were gone. My mirrors showed nothing but a black strip of asphalt swallowed by night. Yet I knew the other lanes were still alive with cars. I could hear them, a faint Doppler whoosh beside me. But in my lane, silence. I pressed the accelerator. The truck responded, but sluggish, like I was pulling uphill against some invisible grade. My hands were sweating on the wheel, though the cab felt like a meat locker. The radio cut out, just static. That's when I heard the tapping. Not loud, just the faintest tick-tick-tick against the passenger window, like fingernails or maybe gravel flicked by tires. Except I was alone in the lane. I turned my head quick, headlights cutting the pine shadows. Nothing there but the glassy reflection of my own pale face. I reached for the phone in the console. No service. Not a single bar, though I'd been pulling steady signal the whole trip. Then the smell hit. Coppery, like rust or blood, sharp enough to sting the nose. By now, every hair on my neck was up. I slammed the blinker and pulled hard left, back into the middle lane. As soon as I crossed the stripe, the warmth came flooding back. My breath stopped fogging. The dash lights glowed steady. Behind me in the mirror, the headlights of trailing cars snapped back into existence, like they'd been there all along but hidden by some curtain I couldn't see. I drove the rest of the way to Houston in silence, radio off, windows sealed. Didn't stop once, not even for gas. The only thing I noticed once I finally pulled into my driveway around 2 a.m. was a smear across the outside of my passenger window. Long, thin, streaked downward, like the print of a wet hand dragged slow. Across the glass, I never told my wife, just washed it off the next morning before the sun came up. but I've never driven that right lane again. And when I pass Huntsville at night, I stay middle or left. Always. Some of the troopers I've gotten to know over the years say they won't take it either, not after dark. Feels colder than a grave, one told me, shaking his head. They don't write it down, don't log it official, but they all know. Next time you're headed south on I-45 and the clock pushes past midnight, you'll see it yourself. A strip of blacktop that looks just a little too dark, a little too empty. Maybe you'll think I'm full of it. Maybe you'll ride it just to prove me wrong. But if you do and the air turns to ice in your lungs and you catch that smell, don't look at the glass beside you. Don't. Because whatever rides that lane back toward Huntsville, it's still looking for company. I don't much like telling this story out loud anymore, but it sticks to me the way mesquite thorns cling to your jeans after a night ride. The first thing you need to know is that I've been riding motorcycles since I was 16, and in Texas, that means a lot of late-night highways, deer eyes flashing in the ditches and bugs thick enough to paint your visor. Highway 16, especially between Kerrville and Bandera, is one of those roads every biker either loves or hates. It winds, it drops, it makes you respect it, especially when the hill country night closes around you. That October night, the air had that cool snap after sunset, maybe mid-50s with just enough dampness to ghost the edges of your breath. I was riding with my buddy Kyle, both of us coming back from a late beer and burger run-up in Kerrville. We'd been riding together for years, always staggered formation, him a little behind and to the left. He had this old Honda Shadow that rattled like a loose can of bolts, and I was on my Yamaha Virago, which purred when I kept her under 60. We weren't talking, just rolling, headlamps sweeping the curves. You hear your own breathing more than anything else out there, with cicadas and the occasional yip of a coyote off in the brush. I remember leaning into a curve near Medina, a stretch where the highway cuts close to the Medina River, when I felt, it not heard, felt, like a presence sliding into formation with us. At first, I thought Kyle had drifted up too close to my side. I flicked my eyes to the mirror, and for a second, I swore there was a third headlight back there. Faint, yellowish, like old glass. "Kyle," I said into the mic of my helmet intercom, "you riding close, man?" Static, then his voice a little tight. "I thought that was you." Neither of us had passed another bike and nobody had passed us. We both slowed a hair, expecting some local boy to swing wide and roar past. But the sound never came. You ride long, enough you know the language of engines, the whine of a crotch rocket, the growl of a Harley, the buzz of a dirt bike. But what slid up alongside me that night didn't sound like anything mechanical. It was more like wind rushing inside, a hollow. A low, steady hum that didn't rise or fall. I made the mistake of looking over my shoulder. For a heartbeat, there he was. A rider pacing me, maybe 10 feet away in the next lane. Motorcycle-shaped. Rider-shaped. Except wrong. No chrome catching. My headlight. No shine of glass. Just a matte dark figure, edges blurred like heat rising off asphalt. And the head, if you could call it that, was featureless. No visor, no eyes, nothing but smooth, pale skin stretched where a face should have been. I whipped my head forward, nearly lost the line of the curve. Kyle came on the comm again, voice shaking. "You saw that too, right?" I didn't answer. Didn't want to, because I knew saying it out loud would make it real. The presence stuck with us for miles. Sometimes I'd see the smear of it in my peripheral vision, sometimes in the mirror, pacing perfectly no matter if we slowed to 40 or kicked it up to 70. Not once did I hear gears shift. At one point, just past the Bandera County line, Kyle muttered, "Don't look. Don't you dare look again." His voice cracked. "He's right up on me." And then came the cold. Not hill country night cool, not October breeze. This was bone-deep cold that knifed through my jacket, like I'd plunged into the Medina River itself. My hands went numb on the grips and the Virago shuddered, though I wasn't touching the brakes. We hit a straight stretch where Highway 16 levels before dipping toward Bandera proper. That's when I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I dropped gears, twisted throttle, and broke formation. For the first time in years of riding with Kyle, I left him. I could hear him yelling in my headset, but the wind swallowed most of it. I didn't look back. I rode hard, ignoring the way my mirror kept catching that pale oval of a head, floating steady in the lane behind me. When I finally rolled into the Valero station on Main Street, lights glaring down like salvation, I was shaking so bad I could barely kickstand the bike. It was 11:47 p.m. I'll never forget because the station clock above the pumps glowed red with the time. Kyle pulled in not a minute later, his face white as chalk. He didn't even shut his engine off at first, just sat there gripping the bars, eyes locked on me. "It didn't have hands," he said finally. "Swear to God, Fonny, I looked. It had no damn hands on the grips." I wanted to call him a liar. I wanted to laugh, chalk it up to bad headlights, fatigue, too much beer earlier. But then he showed me his arm. The inside of his jacket sleeve was frosted over. Actual frost. I touched it and it crumbled like brittle glass. We never finished the ride together. We shut up, fueled up, and rode home separate, neither of us looking at the dark hills rolling past. I barely slept that night. The hum of that hollow engine, still in my ears. I've been on Highway 16 plenty since then. Daytime, never past dusk. And I swear, sometimes when the road dips and the brush part's just right, I'll catch the flicker of a third headlight in my mirror. Dim, yellow, always pacing. I don't care what anyone thinks. I know what I saw. And if you're out on Highway 16 some night and feel another rider sliding into formation with you, don't look. Don't you dare look. I still remember the sound more than anything else. That high, ripping scream echoing under concrete, sharp enough to cut through the ocean wind. Back in '99, I was 16 and thought I was invincible. Most of us did. Corpus Christi was a small enough city where everybody knew everybody's truck by the sound of its muffler, but big enough that there were pockets of shadow you could disappear into for the night. The cracked overpass out past Leopard Street was one of those places. It wasn't much, just a stretch of half-finished highway, concrete pillars holding up a slab of road that never connected to anything. We all heard it was supposed to tie into I-37 years back, but the state ran out of money or changed plans. So it just sat there, a half-built skeleton over scrub and cattails. Folks said the city was going to tear it down, but they never did. We used it the way kids use any forgotten thing, as a dare. Race your car under the belly of the overpass, through the 2 lanes that ran between its massive pillars, and don't let off the gas until you hit the other side. That was the rule. That night, mid-October, Gulf air sticky and cool after sundown, a few of us had gathered out there. "Y'all ready to hear some real horsepower?" Tyler called, leaning against his old Camaro. He had a Marlboro dangling from his lips, the ember flashing red every time he talked. His girl, Amanda, perched on the hood, legs swinging, pretending not to be nervous. There were 6 of us in total. Tyler and Amanda, me and my buddy Mark, plus a quiet kid named Sergio and his cousin Lena. We weren't drinking, not that night. Just bored, looking for something to put a charge in our blood. "Bet you $10 you let off halfway," Mark said, grinning at Tyler. Tyler spat into the weeds. "Hell no, I'll keep it floored, watch me." That overpass always felt wrong at night. It wasn't just the size of it, though. The pillars were huge, thick things that seemed to squeeze in, closer than they should have. It was the way sound carried under there. A dog barking blocks away would bounce back warped like it was coming from underground. And the shadows, Lord, the shadows moved even when the air was still. I told myself it was just tricks of light from the highway lamps half a mile back, but that didn't explain the smell. Damp concrete, yes, but something else too. Metallic, sharp, like rusted rebar or dried blood. Tyler revved his engine. It echoed off the pillars like thunder. Amanda laughed too loud, too high. "Y'all quit acting spooky. It's just a bridge." But her voice didn't carry right. It came back to us stretched thin, like it had traveled farther than it should have. Tyler dropped the clutch. Camaro tires shrieked against asphalt, and he tore into the narrow dark between the pillars. We leaned forward, expecting to see headlights burst out the other side in a clean, straight shot, but they didn't. For a second, there was nothing but black. Then, screaming, a woman's voice, high-pitched and endless. It wasn't Amanda, not exactly. Too sharp, too layered, like 2 or 3 voices tangled together. Amanda's scream followed, closer, real this time. Mark bolted toward the overpass, but I yanked his arm. Wait, because the headlights did appear finally, but wrong. They flickered, darted side to side like the car was fishtailing. Then they just cut out. Dead. Silence rolled in, heavier than the surf. Sergio whispered, "They didn't make it through." We stood frozen. The only sound was the Gulf breeze pushing dry grass against the chain-link fence. I forced my legs to move. Mark ran beside me. The others stayed back. We crossed into the shadows of the overpass, and the temperature dropped, noticeably, like stepping from muggy October air into a walk-in cooler. My breath fogged. Mark swore under his. The Camaro was there, stalled sideways between 2 pillars. Both doors were open, drivers and passengers. Empty. "Tyler," I called. My voice bounced back wrong, chopped up, doubled. The ground smelled of hot rubber and something coppery. I found Amanda's purse in the dirt. It was torn open, contents spilled. Lipstick, a pack of Wrigley's, a Polaroid of her and Tyler at the beach. The picture was bent right across their faces, but there were no footprints leading away. Not in the dust, not in the gravel. Nothing. Jesus Christ, Mark muttered. Where'd they go? We searched the Camaro, keys still in the ignition, engine warm, cigarette butt still burning in the ashtray. I'll never forget the mark we found on the hood. Not a dent, not a scratch. A handprint. Big. Too big. Stamped in rust-colored residue, like something pressed down hard enough to leave its shape in powder. The fingers stretched long, longer than mine by a good 3 inches. Mark touched it before I could stop him. His hand came away, smeared red-brown. He gagged. "It's blood." We backed out fast. Sergio and Lena were crying by then, begging us to leave. We did. Cops showed up later after we called from a gas station payphone. By the time they checked the site, the Camaro was gone. Just gone. No skid marks, no purse, no handprint. Official story was Tyler ran off with Amanda. Happens all the time, they said. Kids elope, kids get in trouble. But I know what I heard. I know what I smelled, what I touched, and I know I still hear it sometimes. Driving late, crossing the newer overpasses on the edge of town. A sharp scream, tearing across the night, echoing from nowhere. Last week, coming home from work around midnight, I passed under that same overpass. It's still there, cracked and empty. As I drove beneath, my radio cut out. Dead silence, then a hiss, then a voice whispering so faint I thought I imagined it. But I didn't. It said my name, and when I checked my rear view, for just a second, I swear I saw headlights behind me. Yellow, flickering. Gone before I blinked. Don't drive that way anymore. Not after what happened. Not after what I saw stamped faintly on my own dusty tailgate the next morning. A long, rust-colored handprint. The coffee stayed hot long after the diner was gone, and I can't explain that without sounding crazy. But I'm telling it straight. Because I still drive that stretch, and because 3 nights ago, at the exact same minute, my phone lit up with an incoming call from a number that hasn't been mine since the Permian split the area codes. I was westbound on I-20, hauling an empty after dropping crude outside Midland. Clear night, wind steady out of the north, maybe 42 degrees tops. Stars looked hammered into the black, the way they do out there when there's no humidity and the pump jacks nod like slow metronomes. That smell of hot oil and dust rides, the median. You get used to it if you were raised here. I was. Odessa High, class of '87, Friday night lights, gas station burritos, and a mama who could spot a DPS cruiser at a mile. Folks think the desert is quiet. It isn't. The wind scrubs at the fenders. The tar strips thump the tires. The rigs moan when they settle. Coyotes cut a stitch of sound across the frontage road. Then it's gone, and you wonder if you imagined it. I wasn't tired, but I wasn't fresh. I'd been up since noon, ran the loop to Crane for a pickup that fell through, then back to the yard on FM 1936 to swap trailers and get pointed toward El Paso. I don't screw with energy drinks. Coffee's my speed. I told myself I'd grab a cup at the Loves in Monaghan's, but the needle on my patience hit E somewhere past Penwell. And when the road flattened into a pale ribbon with nothing on either side but saltbush and drainages, I caught the flicker of neon off to the right. It was one of those low, old-style signs, pink and blue, trying to be cheerful, and the word open stuttered like a dying moth. Under it, a hand-painted board, Last Stop Diner, 24 hours. I know that stretch. I've fueled at every brand there. His Love's, Pilot, Allsup's, Tiny Independence, where the card reader never works and the bathroom key is chained to a horseshoe. I had never seen the Last Stop. Still, it was out there like a promise, and my throat was dusty and my hands smelled like diesel and chain grease. I signaled, eased off into the exit, and the wind took on a different tone down by the frontage road. Thinner somehow, an edge like a harmonica note. Gravel. The lot was mostly gravel with two patched rectangles of asphalt so old they'd gone gray. One old Peterbilt sat catty corner under the lights, 1970s, narrow bunk, paint peeled to the primer in strips like sunburn, Texas plates the color of old bones. No reefer hiss, no idle, no ticking from a cooling engine. The yellow canopy lights hummed. Everything else was sleep. The diner itself could have been ripped from a postcard. Chrome siding dulled by dust. A row of red vinyl booths inside the long windows. A single Wurlitzer jukebox tucked back where the counter made its elbow. A bell on the door waited, brass and patient. There was a payphone outside by the ice chest. Real Bell logo. Handset cord wrapped in metal like a garden snake. I stepped out of my Freightliner and the cold went right through my denim. The north wind carried a dry smell from somewhere. Fryer, grease maybe, but older, a little sweet on top like something had been wiped down with lemon oil years back and never again. I patted my pockets for smokes, decided I didn't want one after all, and pushed in. Bell rang. It was a clean, cheerful ring like the kind you hear in movies. Heat hit me, the kind that hugs your coat and climbs your neck. Fryer heat, griddle heat, and coffee, the bite of it. Bitter and hopeful. I had the dumb thought that if heaven had a smell for people like me, it would smell like coffee at 2 a.m. Evening, the waitress said, already gliding up with a pot. She was about my mama's age then, hair pinned up in a little twist, eyes the color of winter grass. Uniform was pale blue with a white collar, the sort of thing you don't see much unless you're in a museum or a movie. A tiny name tag said Lorraine. Through to El Paso, I said, because that's how truck stop conversations start. Where you from? Where you headed? You seen that mess on the loop? She smiled like she'd heard the script 1,000 times. Long night, she said. Best to sit and let your hands forget the wheel for a minute. She set a mug in front of me before I'd picked a booth. It was white and chipped, heavy in that comforting way. And when the coffee hit it, my stomach answered, with a hollow ache that felt like relief and panic all at once. I slid into the booth by the window, because I like to keep an eye on my rig. Lorraine topped me off and stood waiting, pencil poised over an order pad she wasn't looking at. Pie? She said. Apple's fresh. Pecan, too. Apple, I said, though I'm a pecan man usually. Please. Sugar? I shook my head and reached for the little chrome holder anyway, because truck stop coffee is always mean and a packet takes the edge off. The sugar packets were glossy white, blue letters, familiar at first glance. Then I noticed the back. An ad for a trucking yard outside Odessa with a phone number that started 915. We'd lost 915 that spring, split to 432 and 325 after who knows how many years. I'd bought a new phone just to stop explaining the change to dispatchers. But the packet was clean, bright, not like it had been slid under a napkin holder for a decade and then resurrected for a prank. I tore it open and dumped it in. The first odd thing beyond the sugar was the sound, or the way the sounds didn't belong to the people making them. There were 6, maybe 7 folks in there with me. A trucker with road map hands hunched over eggs, an older couple sharing a slice of pecan, A man in a suit with a newspaper neatly folded like he was about to make a paper hat. A kid in a Letterman jacket, a style I hadn't seen since my year, sat on a stool tapping a quarter against the counter. You expect clink, scrape, sip, chairfoot squeak. You expect the whisper of a page turning, the soft half-cough of someone who's swallowed coffee wrong. What I heard was all of that, normal diner music, but when I tracked it to a body, the body wasn't doing it. The trucker's fork hovered, hand relaxed but weightless, like he'd paused to listen to something only he could hear. The man with the paper didn't turn a page. The kid's quarter never left the counter. And yet the little symphony went on, the clinks and scrapes and soft coughs tucked in neatly, as if the jukebox had a track for Diner 2 a.m. I took a drink and the heat made my eyes water and my palms ache. It was good coffee. It caught my lower lip the way good coffee does when your mouth's gone dry and the night is long. A freight train horn came from somewhere. You hear them, out there. The Union Pacific runs like a shadow not far from the interstate. But what came next was wrong, just a hair. The horn's second blast arrived before the first had faded, like the echo ran ahead to check what I was doing. "Everything, all right?" Lorraine said. "Yep," I said, and I meant it because there wasn't anything to complain about that I could explain. "What's the pie situation?" She smiled again, and her mouth made all the right shapes, but her cheeks didn't pull like they should have if there was muscle behind it. "Coming right up," she said, and walked away, shoes ticking on the tile in a way that didn't match the distance she covered. Out the window, the old Peterbilt watched the highway. I took a second look for my Freightliner because paranoia and habit are first cousins, and didn't see it where I'd left it nose out to the door. I stood up. I told myself I'd just angle a little better into the light. The bell rang when I opened the door, and the wind knuckled the heat off my face. The lot lay under those humming yellow bulbs, gravel, oil spots, some blown weeds crusted with road dust. Old Pete sat with its hood seams shadowed like a scowl. My Freightliner wasn't there. Not where I thought. Not, I'm tired, and misremembering, or it's around the corner of the building because I came in at the wrong angle. It was just not. No tracks in the gravel where 80,000 pounds of wounded habit had turned and stopped. No drips from a cranky power steering line. No nothing. "Hey," I said, which was a dumb thing to say to a parking lot. Back inside, the bell did its little song. Lorraine had already set the pie down. Vapor was rolling off it. The knife cut was neat, triangular, a pie graph of comfort. "You'll want to eat that quick," she said gently. "It's best when it remembers the oven." "What?" "Before it forgets, hun." I sat because my knees had decided that was what we were doing. I shoved a forkful in my mouth like I'd been dared to mistrust kindness. It tasted like cinnamon and brown sugar and the ghosts of afternoons in my mama's kitchen, and the crust had that soft, crisp thing that only happens when you don't rush it. I hate that I loved it. I hate that I bought a second's piece from something I didn't understand. My wristwatch said 2:17 a.m. It had been 2:17 when I came in. The tiny second hand shook forward, counted 5, and then the minute hand nudged and the second hand slid back to 0, and the minute hand slid back 2, and it was 2:17 again. That little sweep repeated once more while I stared. The way a trucker stares at a scale ticket that can't be right. I glanced around to see if anyone else was seeing the comedy in a bad magic trick. The kid in the jacket had that easy slouch, elbows on the counter, chin in his palm. The jacket was Odessa, Broncos red, white piping. I'd worn the same cut, but the way the collar sat, the placement of the patch. Ours changed sometime in the 90s when Nike money showed up. His was older. He winked at me, and it felt like a photograph flinched. "Payphone works?" I asked, too loud. "Of course it works," Lorraine said, tone politely confused, like I'd asked if the coffee was wet. "Dimes in the dish." She nodded toward a chipped saucer by the register. 3 dimes lay there, mercury heads, old silver glint that catches your blood before your brain knows why. I didn't touch them. I had quarters and pride. I took my own coin and stepped back outside. The payphone had scratches where people carve initials when they're waiting for a ride that never comes. The Paint on the metal felt newer than the style. I lifted the handset, heard a dial tone that sounded like dial tones always sound. I punched my home number, the one off County Road West where my ex still used to pick up mail when I was on the road. I'd changed phones that summer but kept the old number until they told me I couldn't. 4:32. It rang once, twice. The wind. Tried to pry my cap off. Yeah, I heard far away. Too far. A man's voice I knew altogether too well. Me, only younger and out of breath. "Hello?" I said, and the word blew white in the cold. On the other end, a pause. Then clatter, the kind of clatter you hear when someone sets a handset down fast on a counter and it sways by its cord and knocks into something. The sound of a bell, my bell, or one like it. Then a scrape like a chair leg. And under all of that, a sound I hate trying to describe because it makes my back cold even now. The steady, syrupy drip of coffee poured into a mug that isn't there. The line went dead. I cradled the handset slow, like any sudden move would be rude, and went back inside because my pie was sitting there and my brain wasn't interested in changing plans. "Your rig's fine," Lorraine said before I got to the booth, and she said it like she was telling a child there's no monster under the bed. "Sometimes they park themselves when you're busy." "Do you have a calendar?" I asked, because the sugar packet had made a splinter in my head and my watch was misbehaving and I still wanted a thing I could hold that would tell me the same story twice. "Kitchen," she said, "by the back door, but we don't flip it much. Days all go the same at this hour." The kitchen door had a round porthole like an old ship. Steam ghosted its glass. I pushed through and got hit with heat and the smell of onions that had loved a griddle too long. Metal racks. White tile. Order wheel with 2 slips clipped there. Patty melt, add jalapenos. Short stack, extra butter. The calendar hung by a nail near the employee sink. June 1981. A convertible with a girl in a scarf smiling into forever. The days were still crisp. No grease thumbprints, no curl at the corners. A little star by the 12th. Someone had written "rain" in pencil that might have been sharpened that morning. "Lorraine?" I said, because that's what my mouth did while my hands tried to decide if they were shaking. She wasn't there. The kitchen had the hollow silence a room gets when there's too much heat for ghosts. A clock above, the calendar stuttered. The second hand hit the 12, jittered there like it was an insect trapped against glass, then slipped back down slope to the 3 and started up again. It made a tiny, dogged sound from the motor when it lost and started over. I listened to it long enough for the number to get welded to me. 217. I do stupid things when I'm scared. Most men do. They just rebrand it checking. I pulled the back door open. A little squeal from the spring hinge, a rectangle of night. Out there was a strip of ground nobody had claimed with gravel, a backup space to unload flour or swap. Grease drums. Silt had settled in a thin coat and the wind picked it up in whispers. I stepped out and felt the sting of grit in my teeth. Footprints start neat and end messy. That's the usual story. The ones I saw were the other way around. Start messy like something had thrown itself ashore from a dark sea, then tightened into perfect boot prints that could have been mine except for the angle of the heel. 2. Square, like a cobbler who'd never seen a person walk had guessed. They went from the far edge of the pad to the door. They did not go back. I crouched. The prints weren't damp. They were packed into the silt like a child had pressed a toy boot hard and slow. The toes had a little dint at the end like someone had rested there long enough for the dirt to slump. You don't get that from a walk taken at 2 in the morning because you need air. You get it from patience, and I have not met many patient things at that hour. Inside, the bell rang, that delicate brass ring. I stood with a foolish, slow care and walked back through the kitchen, brain chanting the little prayers. Men who don't pray keep in their pockets for when a tie-down snaps and a dozer shifts 6 inches on a downhill curve. At my booth sat a man in a suit with my pie fork in his hand. I don't mean he looked like me. I mean the shape where a person sits was occupied by my outline wearing a borrowed suit. If you've ever looked into your cab window at night, and seen yourself looking back from the glass, you know how your heart does a greasy skid before it catches. This was that multiplied by the fact that the window wasn't there. He, me, whatever it was, didn't look at me. It had the fork midair and the pie damped down with its thumb. I could not see the thumb. I could only see the thumb's effect, the way the pie depressed. "Seat's taken," I heard myself say like an idiot. "It is," Lorraine agreed in the tone of a nurse. She glided in and set a new mug in front of my seat, the same white with the same chip. Steam shrugged up and slid into the light. "You are welcome to take it with you. It stays hot better that way. You boys lose too much heat staring at roads." The diner got quieter without getting silent. The sound stayed there, jukebox hush, a chair's gentle complaint, the soft laugh of the old couple. But they moved farther away from me, like the room had breathed out and I'd stayed where I was. I picked up the mug because my hand wasn't going to do anything else until I gave it something to be about. The handle was too warm for a mug that had just been set down. That made no sense. Neither did any other part of the night. I don't remember paying. I don't remember getting to the door. I remember the bell and the wind and that long yellow pool of light. And then I was up on the shoulder of I-20 beside my rig with the engine idling and the CB muttering. My keys were in my pocket. The door was locked. That's a neat trick, and I still haven't solved it. The dash clock said 2:17. I set the mug on the dash because my hands were shaking and I was done with it. It left a ring wet as a kiss. I cranked the wheel and nosed back onto the interstate like a man trying to outrun his own taillights. Westbound, the road slipped under me with the clean certainty that keeps men like me alive. Monaghan's came up and I didn't stop. Pecos. I didn't stop. Coyotes threw their high school fight yelps at each other in the mesquite and I didn't stop. I made Van Horn by dawn and found a place in the corner of a lot where nobody would knock on my door. I slept with my boots on and woke to a sun hard and white and much too close. Later that morning, on principle and stubbornness, I circled back. I told myself if there was a diner that needed recommending or warning about, I was going to nail down which. I took the exit I thought I'd taken, then the one after, then the one before. Frontage roads thinned and fattened and tied back into the highway. I wound past pump yards and equipment auctions and a church with a hand-painted sign that said, "Jesus is watching," and in smaller letters, "So is Pastor Bill." I found one old concrete pad where something had been once, a rectangle of rebar whiskers, and a busted soda machine tipped over like a cow. Glass ground to sugar by 1,000 little shoes. No chrome siding. No clock with a stubborn second hand, no bell. Back at the Loves in Monaghan's, I asked a cashier with a lip ring and a streak of red in her hair if she'd ever heard of the Last Stop Diner. "The what?" she said, gum rolling. "One of those little chrome-sided places," I said. "Closer to Odessa, old-timers joint, good pie." She looked at the older guy behind her, the one with a belt buckle big as a hubcap and a hat that had known horses. "Closest diner used to be Penwell," he said. "Had a pretty decent patty melt until it didn't. Burned in, hell, I don't know. 80-something. County had to put the brush truck out there. Fella parked a Peterbilt under the awning during the mess. Melted the light fixture right down. On his hood, he got cussed for a year." He grinned. "Ain't much else. You want pie, you go to Pecos now or back into town." "Burned," I repeated, and I could feel the little break in my voice and I hated it. "You ever hear of a waitress named Lorraine?" He thought about it long enough to be polite. "Lorraine, like my aunt's friend, used to run the register at the Piggly Wiggly back when we had one. She could count change in her head faster than my grandson can type. She passed on in '99, cancer, the dessert kind that kills you because they find it too late." I drove out back of the lot and sat behind my wheel with the door locked and the mug staring at me from the dash, a clean white half circle like a smile shadow. The coffee inside was hot. I wanted to toss it, but I didn't want to open the door like letting air in would invite something that hated light. I don't know why I thought that. You get superstitions when you're on the road. Never turn off the radio at a certain mile marker. Never stop for a closed gate with a chain unless you can see the cow it belongs to. I left the mug there through El Paso. It stayed warm all the way to the yard, and I know how that sounds. but you'll have to take it or leave it because I'm out of better language. I took it inside, set it on my kitchen counter, and watched the steam curl like the last thread off a cigarette that doesn't want to die. Sometime around 10 that morning, it went cold. The ring on my dash stayed for weeks. I tried Windex. I tried vinegar. It faded to a paler version of itself and then stopped fading. I told exactly one person about it, a guy I used to run nights with who'd seen stranger. He shrugged like men shrug when they don't want to catch your fear. Frontage. Roads get weird, he said. If you gotta stop, stop where you can see 3 other rigs minimum. If you can smell lemon oil, get back in your truck. I started noticing other small wrong things. An exit sign by the county line that sometimes said 2 miles and sometimes said 3, depending on the hour. Mile markers that doubled themselves like a magic trick. 169 and then 169 again, with no curve or detour in between. A 2-digit DPS unit number that turned out to belong to a trooper who retired before my kid was born. My phone, new number, new Nokia with a snake game I lost too much time to. Logged an incoming call at 2:17 a.m. one night while I was idling outside Sierra Blanca, waiting for a wreck to clear. Unknown number. When I scrolled and hit call, it burped static and then I heard the bell. Not any bell. The bell. And the sound of my fork scraping porcelain, a long, embarrassed sound like a man who doesn't want to be rude and can't help. I drove days for a while. Folks who've run nights know what that means. You sit in your motel room staring at the curtain light and eat microwave things you'd arrest your kids for eating. I figured if I didn't give the hour its due, it might let me alone. But the road belongs to what it belongs to, and men belong to the road at whatever hour their debts come due. Eventually, dispatch dropped a run on me that put me right back in the dark between Odessa and Monahans with a north wind and stars, and the tar strips ticking like a black metronome. Somewhere past the exit for the county yard, I saw the neon again. I didn't turn. I didn't even look that hard, but I saw it. Pink and blue and hopeful, low in the salt bush like someone had planted it there and tutored it every night. The open sign wobbled. The payphone shadow was dark as a hole in a tooth. The old Peterbilt sat with its paint peeling new strips. I told myself I was seeing some other thing, some other nowhere joint from a dream, and then the bell rang in my cab. Not outside. In my cab, the bright tiny sound of brass in air that's too warm. I reached for the CB like a weapon. Breaker 19, I said, and my voice sounded like gravel. Anybody got ears on 20 westbound just this side of Penwell? I'm seeing something that shouldn't be where it is. Silence, and then a voice so thin I wanted to cup my hand around it. Come on back. You ever eat at the last stop? I said because I didn't know how else to use my mouth. A pause, the hiss of an open line. Another voice, this one younger or older, I couldn't tell, said, "You don't stop for coffee where nobody breathes." He laughed, not because it was funny, but because laughter is how you end a story you don't own. Just wave at Lorraine and keep your foot in it. I didn't wave. I looked straight ahead and watched my headlights write 2 white truths on the asphalt, and then rub them out before I could read them. The neon slipped behind me like a bad decision you decide not to claim. My dash clock, which had been a little fast since the day I installed it, clicked itself to 2:17 and sat there with a dog's patience. When I got home after that run, there was a matchbook on my passenger seat I didn't put there. White, glossy, blue letters. Last Stop Diner. Inside, the little sticks were unburnt. The strip had never been struck. On the flap, someone had written a phone number with a 9015 area code in a woman's tidy round hand. I called it from my kitchen with the daylight coming in mean and level. It rang, and a recording of a man's voice came on. The kind you used to get when phone companies were patches of the government. "We're sorry. The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Only it didn't say longer, it said, "No low." And the tape jerked and it said something like, "Nur inser," and stopped. When I set the phone down, my counter smelled like coffee. I keep the matchbook in the glove box of a truck I no longer drive. I keep the mug wrapped in an old Odessa Broncos hoodie in the pantry, like you'd keep a family Bible you don't read. The ring on the dash never really left. I sold that truck and the man who bought it called me a month in and said, "Hey, not a complaint, but there's this stain that won't..." And I talked about Armor All and said I'd meant to tell him. 2 summers later, running eastbound this time, sun fat and white, heat rippling above the hood, I saw a glint off to the right, like sunlight off chrome. I told myself it was nothing. I tell myself that a lot and I stay alive. But this time I took the exit because sometimes you have to look at the exact thing you don't want in order to keep it from moving closer when you're not watching. Concrete pad, like before, but someone had dumped fresh gravel and raked it. Neat. No building, no sign. A yucca had muscled up along the back edge and put out a ridiculous bloom like a lit candle. I parked wrong, half on the gravel, half off, and got out. Cicadas went hard at it in the scrub. A roadrunner zipped past, with its head low like it owed someone money. In the printless silt by where a kitchen door would have been, I found one sugar packet, glossy white, blue letters, uncrushed. I didn't pick it up. I've learned a little. A white truck rolled past on the frontage road, slowed like the driver, had seen my plates and knew my mama, and then kept going. The wind found a new note in the broken glass of the old soda machine and played it. I stood there too long. Men are good at standing too long. That night at home, my phone lit at 2:17 a.m. I let it ring. It stopped. It lit again. I answered. Nobody was there. But the line wasn't quiet. It was full of a sound I knew too well to pretend otherwise. The soft, particular hiss you hear in a room where the air is hotter than it should be. The almost laughter of a napkin being set down. The jingle of a bell a half second before a door moves. Under that was a breath. Not a sigh or a gasp or something you'd notice on a friend after a long day. Just the proof of life sound that leaks out of us without permission. "Lorraine?" I said, which is as embarrassing to admit as anything else in this story. A woman's voice said, "Eat before it forgets," very gently, and the line went dead. I have looked for names. I've gone to the county office and acted like a man with a hobby. I've asked the kind of questions that make clerks smile because you're polite and a little lost. A waitress named Lorraine did die. There are always waitresses named Lorraine, and always deaths and always diners that burn down at 3 in the morning when a grease trap gives up. Penwell did have a diner once. A Peterbilt did sit too close to the building during a brush fire, and something did drip out of the canopy, light and harden on its hood like a badge made of smoke. A man did cuss for a year. None of that tells me where my rig went for the 10 minutes I stood in a lot that didn't know it, or why my coffee stayed hot until the sun had crossed the sky, or how a matchbook found its way into my truck with the precise area code. My life stopped using the spring before I stepped through that door. Sometimes I think about the kid in the Letterman jacket, the older couple with their heads leaned so close they could have borrowed each other's air, the guy in the suit with the newspaper. I wonder if they're doors like the door was, if they are openings that hold a shape we want until we get too close, and then the shape laughs without laughter, and we leave with a thing in our pocket we can't explain. Here is the part I can prove. If proof helps you sleep or keeps you awake or lets you tell me I'm wrong in a way that keeps me company. In the glove box, the matchbook is new every time I look at it. The seam of the paper hasn't cracked. The staples are bright as teeth. In my Nokia, yes, I still have it. I can scroll to an old log and see 3 calls at 2:17 a.m. on 3 different dates years apart, and there's no number for 2 of them, and the third says 915-555-199. I have no way to call that number back that means anything. If you do, you can try. I won't stop you. Men can't stop other men from trying to nail stories to walls. I still run nights. You can't eat without a job, and the road won't let go of me anyway. Sometimes I get a whiff of lemon oil where lemon oil shouldn't be. Sometimes the north wind cuts around the mirror and comes in warm, and when I reach up to shut the vent, I touch heat where there isn't any. Once in a while, in the stretch past Odessa where the land throws all its bones at the sky and dares you to notice, I see neon low and mesquite. I keep my hands on the wheel, both of them, and I let my foot do the thing it's learned to do when a long night offers easy kindness. It stays steady, not too much, not too little. And some nights in a real place with a real register and a kid with a lip ring running the coffee pots. I'll be halfway through a slice of pecan, and the bell will ring on a door that hasn't opened yet. A second later, the door opens, and a tired man shuffles through, or a couple, or nobody in the wind. That's a harmless trick of timing, mostly. I don't flinch. I look down, and I see a ring on the laminate where somebody set a mug too close to the edge and almost lost it. Maybe I put my hand over it and feel heat that isn't there. Maybe I tell myself it's the memory of heat. Once, last winter, a DPS cruiser eased in beside me while I was checking a tarp, and the trooper rolled his window down. He had the face of a man who'd memorized every story and used none of them. "Cold night," he said, and his breath ghosted. "You smell coffee?" "Always," I said, and he laughed like I'd meant to be funny. "Stay in the lot with the living," he said, casual as bait. "You see a neon sign that's too good to be true, wave as you go by." "I don't wave," I said, honest for once. "Smart," he said, and pulled away, slow, light bar ticking in red and blue that painted the chrome on my mirror for a second and made it look brand new. I don't ask folks to believe this. Belief is a thing people spend and earn and regret, and I'm not selling. But if you find yourself out there between Odessa and the endless west, with the wind like a file and the stars holding still because there's nowhere to go, and you see an open sign wobbling down in the scrub where no sign should be, keep your hands where they are and your tires where they like to be. If you have to stop, stop where the reefer hums drown out the jukebox you can't see. If you smell lemon oil in November, shut your eyes and count to 7. If you hear a bell at the wrong time, drink your coffee while it still remembers what it's for and go. And if you do go in, if some ache in you asks for heat that isn't honest and pie that tastes like the past, leave something you won't miss on the table. A coin, a word, a part of a name you no longer use. Something easy. Don't look too hard at the calendar. Don't answer the phone. Don't ask where your rig went while you were forgetting the wheel. Don't follow footprints that start messy and end neat. You won't like where they began. The last time I saw the old Peterbilt, it wasn't in a lot and it wasn't under yellow lights. It was in my mirror 2 exits behind me, lights pale as gas station mints, keeping right on the white line like a proper ghost. I told myself it was some other truck with a paint job that had gone wrong in the sun. I told myself a lot of things. And then a north wind shouldered the cab and the bell rang in the dash, bright as brass, and my breath fogged the cab while the lights of a real truck stop lifted up like a town. Inside, the waitress had a name tag that said Kayla and a tattoo of a sunflower around her wrist and a scab on one knuckle where she'd cracked it on a case of syrup. She called me Han without irony and poured me coffee from a pot that had a little burn ring on its belly where the warmer kissed it too hard. I set my mug down, the real one in the ring that wasn't going anywhere, and watched steam that made sense go right where steam goes. Kayla asked if I wanted pie. I said pecan, please. She asked if I wanted 2 scoops or 1. I said none. She shrugged like it was no skin off either of us and slid the plate under my nose. Somebody in a booth behind me sneezed. Somebody else said, "Bless you." The CB on the shelf flickered with music from a high school game in some county where they still use AMI reached into my jacket pocket to pay, and my fingers closed on a sugar packet I hadn't put there. White, glossy, blue letters. I didn't look at the back. I put it back and left cash on the check, too much because I wanted to do something that made sense, and cash is as close as I come. On the dash of my truck, the ring caught the light. When I started the engine, heat came out of the vents like it was supposed to. The clock rolled to 2:18 a.m., and then, with a hesitant little hitch like a man picking a different story halfway through the telling, it rolled back 1 minute and waited. I laughed, sharp and mean at myself, and I didn't watch it again until Pecos. I sleep with the pantry door shut. I don't go in there at night anymore, which is silly, because a pantry is a pantry and a mug is a mug. Some mornings, though, when the heat hasn't kicked on yet and the house is holding its breath, I can smell coffee I didn't make. It smells like fried air and sugar and something sweet on top, like lemon oil that's been asked to do a big job for a long time and will do it as long as you keep asking. The mug stays cool when I touch it. I don't pick it up. I don't need to, I remember. That's the whole problem, it remembers me back.